I already heard what you said. I already heard what you said out loud, didn't I? I already heard what you said.
I didn't hear anything.
So, they're asking people to introduce themselves. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Mr. DeWitt S. United States Marine Corps class of 1969.
Good. Well, thank you for your
Saigon.
service.
Good morning, Dad.
Da Nang Air Force Base,
I can
and
call him
20-year
Dad. Born in
employee.
68, so I can call you Dad now.
I'm 68 years old.
Yeah, call you Dad.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, all right, Dad.
Good morning to it.
Went all the way on,
Mr.
went all the way to
Personality
Hanoi.
Mr.
Wait,
Personality.
where's Nita?
Is that his official job
man, I don't
title?
I got to finish.
He
See, I
cat's
shook John
personality.
McCain's hand
Well,
when
he
walked
worked-
off the-
DeWitt,
Yeah, when he.
DeWitt, how many years did you work at Paratransit?
6.
6, and then you worked 20 years now at
20,
ECAT.
21, 20 and a half years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Mr.
I'm
DeWitt.
still poor.
You might not want to ask him too many questions, because he will give you an answer.
Don't solicit the information, got it.
Do we have access to a copy machine if we had to make, no?
I don't either.
I was about to say, none of us
The
actually
copier
work in
I
this
was able to
building.
access yesterday, they actually have like a cage over the door, and I don't, my badge doesn't work on the Sonatrol today because it's a Saturday, so I was lucky to get in the door only because facilities came and helped me.
So we can just go-
And she said,
We can just go across the street to ECAT and
Yeah, if we have to make a copy, we will, just in case. Okay.
I don't know if I'm the right one to start off the meeting, because I wasn't at the last session.
You want me to start off then?
No, I think the other lead negotiators should start.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Well, I think, I mean, I just have a couple things I'd like to say because, one of the things that, as we've been going through all of these different, collective bargaining agreements with the different unions, one of the things that I've been looking at is, I think Mr. Lowry on numerous occasions at the last bargaining sessions was talking about, this many-yeared contract. And I think, in doing the analysis of kind of what's different with this contract and our other contracts, is that, this was a private company's contract for many years with the employees. And in 2017, and I wasn't here, but the county took over the system. And with that taking over of the system, you have a new responsibility, and that responsibility is now to negotiate with the taxpayers of Escambia County. And so that is part of what makes this contract different. We are in the transition phase between a private corporation's contract with their employees and a public entity's contract with their employees. And so, I think that's part of what the board has asked us to do, which is look at how do we make this contract be accountable, responsible, and transparent for the taxpayers and the citizens, not only the citizens of Escambia, but the citizens of the federal government that also pay for a lot of the, grants that are subsequently used to operate the program. So, I think that to assume that a private company's contract is what's going to be just taken, modified, and then, subsequently approved is probably, in my analysis, not exactly what the board has asked us to do. So that explains some of, I think, the disconnect and some of our communication from what I've seen in the past 6 or 7 months. So that's what I would start with. Unless I'm misspeaking on the time frame, I think that's what we've been asked to do. So that's why when we talk about, making sure that all of our contracts are responsive to the individual entities that they are bargaining agreements for, but also having some symmetry on them, that's where we're coming from. So.
So I'd like to respond to some of that. So what I just heard was that for 73 years, the contract was contracted out to a private company to manage the system. But it's always been, for the camera that's paying attention here, it's always been tax dollars that have been provided to the private entity to run the system. And it's been the money has been a pass-through. So if the county, which when they took it over from years ago, when it used to be the city that everybody ran it, if they're not paying, it kind of sent the message to me that the county has never been paying attention to the private company, and they didn't know anything about a contract, labor contract, that has been in place for years. You know, we've always been a Escambia County area transit. We've worked with private companies that the only individuals that ever worked at those locations that were actually under the private company were 3 individuals on the property. Everybody else were Escambia County transit employees that didn't change. The general manager, the finance director, and the maintenance manager were the only 3 that actually used to work for the private employers. Everybody else worked for Escambia County Area Transit. And the monies were always just a pass-through. And we heard it every time we went to the negotiating table, that they always had to report back to the county the status of our contract. But you're sending me the message that you all didn't know about this contract, you didn't know what was in this contract, and now you want to get it in line with your other contracts. That,
I think I'd like to respond.
okay, well, let me finish.
Yeah.
I think that is a disservice to the individuals. I mean, we can go on and on and on and talk about what the transit workers didn't have versus what county employees had. I mean, you know, the obvious one is pension. We didn't even have a pension at ECAT until 2004, which was a 401k. So while county employees have been enjoying pensions since the 1970s, transit employees were getting pennies. I mean, we had people retiring with $30,000, you know, and that's it. Some retired with nothing. So when you insinuate you want to get it in line with the other county contracts, we're different. You know, we have a contract that we negotiated all these years. We don't plan to give up what's in this contract. We don't plan to give away what we fought for, which many times we had to stand on the street with informational pickets or even a strike. We had to stand out there to fight for every little thing we got in this contract. So when you insinuate that you want to line it up with the other, you know, county contracts, I'm not so sure we're in agreement with that, because, you know,
that
there's a
is
long
why-
history.
And
of-
that is why I'm saying that I think there's a communication issue, because I understand, so that's why I'm trying to say, in the analysis, I've tried to understand your position and why you feel so strongly about the contract that you have. And that's why I wanted to start with that conversation.
Okay.
About the difference between where you're coming from and where I've been instructed to come from.
So I don't believe there's a difference, because what you just said to me, the way I received it, is that the county for 73 years has not made the best decisions for the taxpayers by having it as a private company.
No, and I think Mike can speak to
I
that.
don't, yeah.
So once again, I guess we'll start off today
Well,
with.
No,
Wait,
please
wait,
don't,
wait,
please
wait.
don't.
I'm
Let me-
speaking, hold on. When I'm speaking, I do not need to be interrupted. We did not interrupt any of you. And if I say something that she does not like or agree with, wait till her turn.
Mr. Howard, I have a
I'm not
name,
going to
and my
continue to
name
be
is Ms. Hewitt,
disrespected every time I sit
and I
at the
did not
table.
interrupt you.
all right.
I was seriously talking. I didn't stutter.
But
I didn't
Curtis,
say anything
Curtis,
or anything
Michael
else.
Michael was talking.
Look,
I did not interrupt him.
You didn't.
I asked if I could respond when he finished, and that, I wasn't given
You
that
didn't.
opportunity.
Well, that was my
Mike,
fault.
Mike.
I'll take the blame.
if you really want to go through it, Mike was talking, she jumped in. When she finished talking, I started speaking. As I was speaking, she cut me off. That's the fact.
Well, I asked if I could respond, and I didn't.
Mike,
get the opportunity.
all right, but you wasn't cut off. You stopped because Mike was talking, and you gave him the courtesy.
With that,
I didn't get the same courtesy. I didn't get it yesterday. I don't know why you keep sugarcoating it. It's disrespectful. It is what it is.
well,
And if
okay.
I don't say, if you guys say something I don't like, I sit here patiently and wait my turn.
When you're finished, Curtis, I would like to respond.
Go ahead. Just do whatever y'all want. That's what y'all apparently do. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, being the person who has represented the county in labor relations, collective bargaining for a good part of this time period, not 72 years.
Total 75.
I look like it, but I haven't been around for 75 years. No, I mean, the county was not, the county saw that the relationship between the private company, whether it was First Transit or a predecessor, and ECAT was a business relationship that they did not interfere with. That what they did was, they put out they went through the procurement process and got a management company, and whatever was in the procurement process was adhered to, but it didn't drill down to the point where they interfered with the collective bargaining negotiations between ECAT and the private company, which was certified under the National Labor Relations Board, and the Escambia County wasn't the public employer. So, I mean, there were times when things were going on over at ECAT that the county was not pleased with because there was a labor dispute going on that might interrupt services. But even in those instances, we didn't get involved. So, no, I think Janice's point is what her point is, which is, the county, as a public employer, naturally comes from a different perspective, largely because we're dealing with, as she had identified, taxpayers, but we're also organized under a completely different collective bargaining law, the Public Employees Relations Act, and Article 1, Section 6 of the Florida Constitution, and how the rules are different. So, I think what she's trying to do is to communicate the difference in our philosophies. Am I right, Janice? Isn't that what you're trying to do?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not something to agree or disagree with. She's just identifying for everyone the difference in our philosophies, the difference in our approach.
Mr. Mike, you made a great point, actually, that the transit employees did not receive the same benefits as the county employees. I've seen that. And that's what we're trying to do. ECAT is county, y'all are county employees. We want all of y'all to be recognized as county employees and receive the same benefits as the county employees. As county employees, they get merit system benefits, which it does mirror in some ways some of the things that were already in your agreement, just in different verbiage. Because again, it's bringing it into kind of like the county lingo or the county's perspective on stuff. And so that's why everyone should keep an open mind going through these, because we really want y'all to identify as county employees. You're ECAT employees, you're also county employees. Mm-hmm. And we want to do what's best for the employees and the county as a whole.
Let me
Go ahead,
finish.
because I have a response to that, too.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of key factors that y'all are missing. And so, what I believe, what I heard, as I was saying before I was really cut off, is you referred to taxpayers' money. It was always about the taxpayer money. And anytime you bring private sector employers on, you pay more money for the service than you do when you keep it in-house. Those are facts. So the county, in my opinion, from what I heard, was 75 years, or 73 when they contracted out, the last 2 years, whatever, hasn't been contracted out. Did not do its due diligence. As all unions were claimed for all city and counties that privatize. Privatizing does not give the city or the local governments what they need in service. And it's been proven time after time, city after city, over and over. It definitely doesn't do anything for the workers. It does nothing for the taxpayers, but pay out more money, and then eventually they bring the services back in-house, as you did here. So, there's a couple of things that are different that I want to make sure I put on the record. We're just not county workers, we're transit workers. Just like you have the Railroad Act, we have the Mass Transit Act, which identifies that we have certain rights, certain benefits. That's where we originated and started off these negotiations from. So you receive federal monies, as you said, and it's taxpayers' dollars. And those taxpayer dollars ensured when the Congress voted for the Mass Transit Act that workers had certain provisions and the right to have collective bargaining without the right to strike. So we should have a right to collectively bargain over our issues. Doesn't mean that we have to get the same as county and city employees, because technically we're not county and city employees. We are transit workers that fall under the Mass Transit Act. You can't put that aside and say that Escambia County's rules and regulations are the only things that we bargain over. That's not true. The only reason why I believe that y'all at the table today is because we have that legal right. Not just because we're city and county workers, because it's your service, but because the federal guideline says if you want to receive that federal money, you have to provide that right to us. It's not an option for you, or you send the money back. 2, the taxpayers of Escambia County is the same way. That opportunity is afforded under PERT to make sure that we have a fair collective bargaining process, and that you can't just tell us we have to accept what other unions or what the county wants to be similar. Our work is not the same work. We drive buses. We have extra boards. We work weekends. We work nights. County and city employees don't do that. So we've got a different budget for Escambia County because it comes out of some of the tax money from gas tax. So we're not sitting at the table at equal playing field as other unions. I'm not discrediting them. I want them to receive the best that they can receive too, my union brothers and sisters. However, we are not the same. We're not the same as being under federal and state laws. We have other provisions, and you need to recognize those provisions. And whatever else happens, fine. But you sent it out to a private company. We negotiated all of that private company. This language that we previously have TA'd is language that's in the transit industry, not in the county and city industry, because we work as transit workers. So if you're trying to tell us that we're going to get more in line with some of that, that's problematic. So I hear you. I respect you. I respect what you're saying. I just don't think that you capitalized all of what we should be discussing and the reason why we're here today.
And the only thing I want to, because he said it perfect, the only thing I want to add to that is simply saying that for 73 years, if the county didn't oversee the private sector company, that's not the fault of the transit workers. But I think that was a mistake on the side of the county. If that is what you're insinuating, that you didn't pay attention to what was being negotiated in this labor contract. But he said it perfectly. That labor contract is targeted towards transit workers, and it's common in the industry, even in the public sector of transit across this country, language that you see in our contract.
Yeah, I wasn't discounting all the language. I was trying to make the point that there needs to be a marriage of the two. That's why I made the point that you're ECAT workers, you are transit workers, you're also now county workers. There needs to be a marriage of the two. It needs to be inclusive of both county workers and ECAT transit workers. So it's not discounting what is under the Mass Transit Act at all, because y'all are y'all's own separate, just like firefighters and EMTs, they work 56-week schedule. I mean, that's not a common thing. There's different county employees that do work different oddities, and so that is always in consideration and a factor. So I think the point that we were all just trying to make is just everyone just keep an open mind, because we're trying to marry the two right now. And so it can't all be transit, what was previously in the transit, and it can't all be the HR policies, procedures, and what county already worker goes by. It needs to be a marriage of the two.
So the question that I have, and that was going to be part of my questions, but I'll ask it now. So, Mike, we have a bunch of TAs from before. Where are we today with those TAs? Are we starting fresh? Are we recognizing the TAs that we, and are we recognizing that we're negotiating on the issues that, those 5 or 6 issues, I don't remember the exact number, that we didn't have closure on.
Some of the, as you know, the collective bargaining agreement was taken at your request to the city commission, who has a legal right to consider it for ratification. They considered it and voted against the ratification of the agreement. Technically, that means we have to go back to the table and re-explore what was agreed to under that proposed contract, because that's clearly not ratified. Just like your bargaining unit members had the same opportunity to look at that contract and ratify it up or down, and if they had voted it down, we would be here for that purpose. I think some of the contract articles that we agreed to before, we can go forward with an agreement. I think some of these articles have to be revisited, because if they're not, we're not going to get a ratified agreement, and that's what we need to get to.
One response to that,
hold on.
one quick response is this. The difference between our side and your side is, in good faith at the table, when we worked on those TAs, we went to our membership and recommended it, to our entire membership that packed that union hall. The difference is your side, when it was brought in front of the commissioners for voting on it, we can go back and watch the video, no one recommended it from your negotiating team. So there's a big difference there, okay? So I don't know if those commissioners were given, I have no idea, you could tell me, but I don't think they probably saw the entire agreement. I don't know if they did.
No.
Well,
Let me assure you that the commissioners sincerely.
they saw all these TAs, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay, Mike. I don't really care if you interrupt me, to tell you the truth. You can interrupt me all you want.
Okay.
Careful what you ask.
Don't get interrupted because you lost a thought.
I think that the county commissioners sincerely were, a majority of the commission looked at the agreement and was not willing to adopt it because of the substance of it, not because anybody recommended it or not recommended it. It's apparent to me that they were not in favor of that agreement, and that their charge was to go back and revisit it. That's right out of the gate. So,
What articles are you suggesting we keep them? What articles are you suggesting that you have problems?
okay, Chris, we've
By the county
communicated.
Well, I realized you weren't present at the last session, but we did have this discussion, and we did actually give some of the contract, a proposal, revised proposal, and we discussed some of those articles. And we communicated the intent to reopen other articles as well.
Which ones?
Well, I don't believe we've even finished discussing the ones that we gave you.
Why don't we do this? Why don't
go one by
Why
one.
don't we take a caucus?
Okay.
Let's take a caucus, and then I'll come back and answer your question, Curtis. I just want to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
Can we
Okay.
go someplace?
Sure.
We'll go. We'll go.
No, we'll be fine.
No, we'll be
We're
fine.
fine.
You sure?
Yeah.
We won't be. Make sure we turn
They
everything
got-
off.
yeah.
'cause I'm-
We won't be long.
I just want to make sure.
We'll leave David for y'all.
So, we're gonna try to do this, it's sort of, there's a lot going on, and we're gonna try to do this in an orderly fashion, so bear with me.
Okay.
First up, you asked to identify some of the TAs that had been TA that we're still good with in terms of a TA.
Not some, I asked which ones.
Yeah, and we have some of those that we're going to advise you of today.
Okay.
So for these articles, we're good with the language that had been previously TA.
Okay.
And so there's a couple subsets of these articles. So some are TAs that we can agree to continue. Some are, we think, need some work or need some discussion, and some we're still looking at. So those TAs would be Article 11,
These
Which
are the,
ones?
These are the ones you are good with.
TA'd. I'm still good with.
Okay, good with.
The full article.
The article.
Right, okay, go ahead.
11, 12, 22, 23, 26, 27. You like my dramatic reading of this? 29, 30, 40, 43, 44, but the language is the same, but we moved it to 7.
Which we've previously given.
46, the language is the same, but we moved to what we gave you as a general provisions article. I mean, it's just a reorganization, but the language is still okay. 47, we gave you as a general provisions article, the same language. 50, 51, which is moved to the general provisions article, but 51 is good. 52, now, 53 is obsolete because it has to do, I think it has to do with the transit authority.
Yes, 53 is a transit authority.
And because of legislative action since the last time we were at that round, it's no longer. And 55, I think, is the double map. And we are proposing for that to be obsolete also, because we're moving away from the double map system, is that correct?
That is correct.
So to put that in the contract would be referencing something that we're moving away.
Whatever we replace it with, we can put that language instead.
Well, whatever, we think that whatever
You don't have to shake your head,
System.
no. It's-
Whatever
That's our
system,
plan.
whatever system, I mean, we could refer to a system, but to refer to a specific proper noun of a system, when that might change from time to time, is probably not so cool for the contract. So, now, in terms of leaves, we have proposed sort of rolling all the leaves into an article. And so there probably will be changes to the language, so we're going to have to talk about that whole set. I think it's 8, 9, 16, and 17?
8, 9, 16, 17?
Yeah,
But
but we
17
did
we
keep
did keep
7,
separate.
yeah, we could keep 17 separate and provide you with some of that for conversation.
Yeah. So 8, 9, and 16 are now all Article 8.
Is that what we already previously agreed to in the
No, that's what
TA?
their suggestion is.
Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry. That's
Oh, yeah.
suggestion.
That's me.
Sorry.
So
I'm
now-
trying to understand from
okay,
the
now-
TAs that we've already had,
So,
what categories
all right,
might
so
just explain.
okay, so
This is the
So
one
you-
I want to see changes to.
yeah, I gave you a list of those, I ended with 52. So now, then I talked about 53 and 55 being obsolete.
Correct.
Okay. Now, let's put the curtain down and lift it back up. I'm going to another set.
Okay, that's what I need.
Yeah.
Okay. So that
So
was 8, 9, 16, 17.
that's the second, curtain come down, now the curtains come back up, we'll talk about leave. Leave, what we have done is we've kind of rolled them all together. So we're going to have to take a look at those and see if that's something that you can agree to or not. Then, okay. We have given to you the next. Curtains come down again, curtains go back up again, and now I'm on level 3, okay? We have given you language that has changes to it for the following articles. 7, 10, 13. You know, for the people in the audience that are listening, I'm going to start that all over again because they don't know what I'm talking about when I just say numbers.
Say with the TAs.
Article 7 is union rights. Article 10 is job postings and promotions. Article 13 is safety and training. Article 20 is group health and welfare. Article 25 is civil emergency working conditions. Article 31 is assignment of bus runs, schedule, and work assignment. 33 is extra work and extra board operators. Article 42 is retirement. Article 48 is the duration, but the duration is the duration, right? Then there's a miscellaneous article that we proposed.
What number is that?
It doesn't have a number yet.
It would need to be enumerated whenever.
That has to do with the provision of an EAP program, tuition reimbursement, providing an attorney to defend an employee in civil actions, and agree on a drug and alcohol policy. And then we have this other article that we gave you, which is not numbered yet. It's called General Provisions, and it has some of those things that we talked about that we rolled up into it.
I don't have
Hey,
that.
You don't have this?
There should be two.
The last two,
I don't have any of that.
pages.
What you've been talking about.
we do not have.
All right, well, I will
I
give you.
didn't see any of this.
Let me go get copies of it for you. So, I mean,
I don't think we can make copies.
the general provisions
Says they were counted.
are kind of all those things that existed in the contract in different places, but are kind of boilerplate contract structure. It's,
Wait, what is that called? General provisions?
Uh-huh.
What else was,
And
what was the one prior to
was called
that?
miscellaneous.
We have miscellaneous.
I have, oh, I have general provisions.
Yeah.
But I don't see miscellaneous.
Yeah, it's right before it. It's on page 24.
This was the revised.
I don't have it.
General provisions is 25.
Did you get it in your copies?
okay, and then we have,
Okay, we're okay.
now,
Real quick, Madam Board, can we go back through the TAs and make sure you read the name of what it is again, just kind of like you did that?
yeah, I don't have them,
Okay, yeah.
but,
Maybe you got.
what do we, I'll get to that in just a second. Okay, now, to clarify a couple of things, I think we on this side of the table understood, if you, I didn't mean to rush.
No, we're fine. We have them.
Okay. The people on this side of the table understood that it was probably in everyone's interest and that you were open to looking at Articles 5 and 6 and revising Article 5 and 6, which is the grievance article and the arbitration article. So,
Yeah, I don't know. You thought we were open to talking about those?
to revise, to take another visit with them.
I just wanted to understand what he
Yeah,
said.
that's what I said. So, I mean, that could be wrong. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's our impression. If it's not our impression, if our impression is wrong, then let me say it another way. We think we should look at Articles 5 and 6 and take a look at making that a cleaner, more efficient process. One last piece of, now, we have a couple articles that we're going to try to secure copies of, and we're going to give them to you today. But one thing of housekeeping that I would like to raise is that since this stuff was communicated to you last, we provided, did we provide an MOU? We provided the ATU with an MOU and with a revised Article 42 to agree with the MOU on the bio.
Yes, that's the email that you sent to Mike. Yes,
Yeah, that the county sent to Mike.
we do have that.
Okay.
Is this a copy for me or?
Yeah, you can have that, yeah. So in this packet is a retirement proposal.
On the last, right.
It precedes these two things that I gave you. So these things that you have in your right hand supersedes what's in that packet,
Okay,
okay?
good to know.
I have that list. That's the last one, too. I've been asked if I could read out
You've got the list. I wanna
the
make sure
list. 11 is physical examinations. 12 is employee independent transportation. 23 is bus audio video surveillance. 26 is seniority 27 is reduction in personnel and reemployment. 29 is protecting time. 30 is time allowance. Get that right? 40 is customer service associates. 43 is media policy. 44 to 7 is bulletin boards. 46 is prior agreements. 47 is waivers. 51 is successor clause. 52 is no strike lockout. 22 is FRS benefits.
You skip 50?
50
50
cellular.
is cellular phone policy. Okay? That's just for the benefit of people who do not have the paper in front of them.
No, that's fine. And I'd like to ask two other questions for clarification. The wage reopener, where are we with the ECAT wage? It's my understanding, Mike, let me just tell you my understanding first of all. It was rejected or wanting to be discussed with 1395 because the way they understood it is that it was all current employees, but not new employees to come in. So it was something that kind of messed up the way the wage progression is in the CBA currently. So that's the way I understand it from our perspective. So where are we on that?
Does everybody understand the issue that Curtis just articulated? Curtis, could for Genesis and our team's sake, could you go into a little bit more detail?
So
I think I understand what your point is, but if you could explain it in better detail so that everyone
So
understands.
the MOU that came across that we had some discussion on for the county workers yesterday was kind of given out to all the unions pretty much with the same language.
Right here.
However, the ECAT workers have a different pay structure in the CBA, which list out every step and what people should get. The wage reopener, the wage across the board that the county gave or was offering this go-around was only to employees that were current, not to the wage scale that were people that were coming in. So example, when we come in and we're hired as transit workers, you go through a 90-day probation period, so on and so on, and you come in at this pay. And then when you come out and you finally actually finish training, you start off at a different pay. And every year or whatever the CBA says, that's what you fall under. However, the 3% was not offered at every tier of our wage scale. It was only offered for the incumbent employees that were currently working, which messed up our wage scale. And what it does is as time goes on, if you don't increase that first portion of the wage scale, it stays the same. And how we negotiate our contracts is that each one moves as we get raises. So now we have one or two tiers that are not receiving that 3% across the board. Well, it's going to end up stagnating, and that's the question on the table. That's why the union continued to wanted to have discussions over asking, and it happened when I was here. When I first got here, we had a wage increase, and it was applied to that, if I'm not mistaken. It was applied to all the tiers of our CBA, but this time it was not. So that's the difference in why it's 1395 is holding out.
And that was described exactly the same way in last November when we met.
Yeah. Yeah, so, when the board says 3%, they mean 3% across the board to the employee, not necessarily to the scale or the classification. So it inures to the employee that 3%.
Well, so why has it been done the first time?
What was it done the year before?
What I would say is that perhaps when people were signing that, they may or may not have understood what they were signing from the standpoint of, I have consulted numerous people about whenever you do a 3% across the board, And to the person, everyone has stated that when you do across the board, it inures to the employee, not necessarily to the scale. So in most, in all of the other employees in the county, the base wage rate for that particular classification does not increase by 3%.
And that's why
The-
you have problems with your current structure with them.
Yeah, and so,
But I mean,
once,
I have 27 years with the state, and when the state does it as well, it inures to the individual employee. It does not necessarily inure to the wage rate. So it's not like this is uncommon practice when you give across the board that it inures to the employee.
it is uncommon for unionized workers. So I understand what you say, but as I stated yesterday, I'll restate today in this negotiations, it's all collectively bargained over. So it's our understanding that everybody understood, all the county commissioners understand that we have different contracts. They've been managing ECAT's contract before when it was private sector, and they've been managing it since it was public sector, and since it's been brought in-house. So I don't want to speak for anybody. I just believe that you're creating a problem if you leave it the way you suggested, because then you're going to walk around and you're going to have a transit service that in 5 to 10 years, you will not be able to hire anybody because the wage increases that everybody else got across the county will not be at the bottom level. So instead of coming in, just as an example, at $10 an hour, and it was raised every year with everybody else at 3%, because these are people you ain't even paying, so it's not even a cost factor as much as you would think. But instead of it being $11.50 in 5 years, and grew with inflation, you're still bringing them in at 10, and ain't nobody coming to work for you because it's not attractive to come in and work. Because when people want to get hired for a job, that's the most crucial time. Incumbent employees at least have been getting paychecks for periods of time. So when you want to come into a system, there's no incentive.
Mr. Curtis, can I make a point of clarification?
Sure.
So there's a difference between across the board raises and what's considered a cost of living raise. The cost of living raise would be applied to the base rate DBM, even if you're not employed. So that's what would actually shift the scale and shift with inflation and moving forward to make sure that we do stay up to date or as close as we can with the industry standard. Because you're right. If the pay scale never ever moves and is still the same in 20 years, then that's a huge disservice to everybody. So a cost of living would be applied across the DBM, that's the range. But when you do across the board, that is only given to current employees, and that's why it's not applied to the base rate for new people coming in. So that's just a point of clarification. So we do the cost of living
That's your
would
term.
apply to everybody. Yeah, I'm sorry, and that's what I was talking about earlier. It's just kind of like a difference in terminology.
And the only difference is, truly, is that, yeah, when you're a governmental employee, strictly governmental employee, that applies on a non-union setting, right? That's just like the federal government. My aunt works for the IRS, right? And so when the IRS gets raises across the board, they still negotiate because they still have collective bargaining. So there are things that change from most federal employees that they get. Not a whole lot, but some. And that's the same thing here. The transit workers have a different contract and will always have a different contract because of the nature of the business. We're not true county employees. Our work is not county work. Like this building is closed today and people are off. When they was here yesterday, we've got folks working, driving buses today. Right?
Actually,
So,
facilities is working here today.
I'm sure you got a few, don't get me wrong, I'm sure you got a few people.
I mean, we're all here.
Right. We got a few people, I'm sure, right?
And I'm more than happy for you to
But-
come ask my husband how many hours I work a week.
So-
But what I was going to say was this, so as I stated to begin with, you were under a contract with a private company, and that private company was providing that 3% to the wage base, to the base wage rate.
Okay.
annually. And that is not what the county has been doing. The county's been providing 3% across the board raises since, I believe, 2013. I've got it, I know it's 2010, 2011 they started. I mean, there's like, they missed a year and things like that. So, what the county's been doing is providing that to the employee. And so that was the practice that we continued.
Madam
That's not
Administrator.
our practice, but okay, I understand.
I understand, we just haven't.
Dennis, I just want to add to this, because, you say that, but I got to say this, because when I hear you say that, I think to myself, the difference, in my perspective, is a private employer that we had before. The difference is, they understood to look at the labor agreement before they tried to issue out a raise. They understood that there was a labor agreement, and they didn't ignore the labor agreement. They understood that in this structure of the labor agreement, there was a progression. They understood that
Mike?
that at 3% would then obstruct that progression and change it unilaterally without sitting down and discussing it with the union. That's what they understood. What you're telling me is the county ignored the fact that there was a labor agreement in place and that there was a definite pay structure in place. Your transit director knew it. She should have spoke up and pointed that out, but I'm assuming she didn't. That should have never occurred. When we got your MOU, we immediately responded to it and said, look, the year before, just like the year before, I immediately responded to Eric Kleiner and to Amy Lavoie and said, y'all are not looking at our labor agreement. They both looked at it. They both said, you're absolutely correct. We made a mistake. We forgot that you guys have a progression. And next thing you know, we negotiate the addendum that addressed everything, because they understood that if a new hire came in, if today you gave the 3% and someone that started in the last class under a certain classification, they would get a 3%. And then a week later, another employee would walk in the door, they started another class, they would have a different pay scale, and they'd have a week or so difference in seniority. That's ridiculous to say that they would end up making 3% than the person that started a week before or a month before. It doesn't matter what you say. It's the point that what I see is happening here is you're trying to unilaterally ignore our labor contract
Well,
to achieve a 3%.
well, that isn't what we were doing, but I think, if I can say it a different way, when you negotiate wages, you can negotiate a wage increase for the employees in the bargaining unit, right? That's what Janice was saying, like what happens at the state. They sit down and bargain a wage. I mean, it could have a wage increase. It could be, everyone gets $1,500 this year, something like that. Separately is the wage progression table. Separately is starting pay. Those are other things that we can negotiate or not. So when we made the offer of the 3%, the 3% was an increase to the existing employees in the bargaining unit. We did not make an offer to increase the progression for the starting pay. And those are different,
Mike,
those are different things.
Your own MOU doesn't say what you just said.
All right, then that's the problem.
It doesn't, it says the pay increase for employees included in the collective bargaining agreement certified by the Public Employee Relation Commission. That's all. That's whether they're an employee now or an employee that walks in the door tomorrow. They all fall under that, and their pay scale is listed under the collective bargaining agreement.
And so the bottom line is, he just told you that it was cleared through the previous county administrator and county staff, because I'm sure they didn't apply that in the dark. And that's it. So, no, we're fine. I understand your position, you
Yeah.
understand our position.
Yeah, I think so.
We'll have to,
So we're the only employees that don't have a raise right now. Just to make sure everyone understands that. For that, under the camera. Because
It's
we're
not a-
standing by our convictions that we negotiate for existing employees and the future employees. We sit here and we support all transit employees when they walk through that door. And we support the fact that we collectively bargained in good faith a progression that is in our contract that we honor.
so,
Well, you're entitled to that position, Mike.
so you're,
For sure, but there's a footnote to all of that. I mean, we did sign MOUs with other units that didn't take that position,
I
but
don't think they had a progression.
you can take,
what's your position on the current employees now?
I'm sorry, Chris, what do you mean, what is our position?
So our problem is the tier that I expressed to you. However, the current employees hadn't received anything. So the MOU doesn't describe what you guys are saying. It describes everybody. So we've been talking about it back and forth. I think Mike said something to you guys back on 12/11 about it as well. But the current employees haven't received anything. So where's our path to solving our problem? And what are the current employees going to receive?
Are you asking us what our position is on the MOU?
The MOU and the current employees, yes.
When you say current employees, you mean the employees that are currently employed?
Yeah, current employees. She just made a statement that across the board, it was for employees that have previously been here. They haven't received anything,
Okay.
and they should have been receiving it.
All right. Well, I think we've given you some food for thought in our presentation and identifying some of these articles that are resolvable and are at issue. We'll take a brief caucus, not a minute, maybe 5.
Okay.
Pensacola minutes,
Okay, thank you.
and we'll have an answer for that question.
Okay, thank you. Question about the buyout, too.
Okay, good. So I think,
Camera on?
No, yes, oh, whoops.
Are we on?
I think,
Was it recording all that conversation?
yeah, that's why I was
Riveting
quiet.
conversation.
You know,
Guys,
I think you asked a
they're back
question.
live.
That's on your way.
And maybe I misunderstood it, but the question was, what is our position on the 3% that was offered as it would apply to all of the current employees? So I think that means not necessarily resolving the issue of the progression, but like, is it possible to have a distribution increase of 3% with the signing of an MOU? And the position of the county is, yes, we could do that. And what we had said before, and we'll say again, is we can continue to bargain. But if you wanted to capture and have that 3% put into paychecks now with the signature of the MOU, we can do that.
It's going to be different than the previous MOU, which is the progressions.
I think if you mean different in past years, yes. The answer is yes. Because the authorization that we have to give a 3% wage increase did not also authorize us to change that, the amount of the progression. I hope, I'm just trying to answer your question.
Yeah, you answered my question, but, our problem with the progression, so we'll just hold on our position.
Okay.
Because the progression is more important than the individuals. The way our progressions, as I explained when we came in there, we get paid by progressions. We don't get paid by individualism. And what you're suggesting is individualism, which kills the pay structure. And it actually shouldn't, in my opinion, it kills a union's pay structure and it creates individualism when unions are about,
Equal pay for equal work.
right. And so he said it
Taking
best.
care of women,
Right.
minorities.
So nobody's at an unfair disadvantage of operating a bus. If you're a first year bus operator, second, third, or fourth, we all make the same. And so what the county's trying to do, from what I understand, is individualize that process, which ATU is definitely not interested in that.
Well, if that's your position, you're
Yeah, no,
welcome to it, and that's fine. I will say this, not that I'm disagreeing with you, but just to sort of, just to let you know how we view this, is that, sometimes I negotiate wage increases and collective bargaining agreements that literally have different people in the bargaining unit getting different amounts of money, whether it's merit pay or it's based on performance evaluations. There's some criteria. It happens, I do that from time to time. That's not what this is. This is the same percentage amount going to every single person that is in your bargaining unit. We're not singling people out.
Percentage
And we're not,
amount, not necessarily the
percentage
same amount of money.
that's what I said, percentage amount. And we're not discriminating against anyone in the unit. So, because you brought up the issue of equal pay, it is actually an equal percentage to everyone.
So I negotiated city contracts, and a few county contracts, mostly city, not county, but in those contracts,
Yeah.
they've recognized the progression and the percentage across the board. That's what I'm used to, which is still a pay progression and not individualizing. However, you do have those multi-classifications, because in cities and counties, you have 20, 30, you have multiple, you have a lot of classifications.
Yeah.
A lot more than you would have in transit. But I'm not used to or ever seen when our unionized properties of ATU individualism, so I don't want to start that trend. I don't want to be the first IVP to get that imposed on, so.
I do want to clarify something. Signing the MOU would allow for the current employees to have the 3%, and the progression, the wage progression, would still be on the table to negotiate. So it would allow for the relief of the current employees right now, so they could get the 3%, but then the negotiations would still continue on the wage.
But it's individualism.
Okay,
not
that's
in
fine.
the progression. So while they would get it, that if they was next month was their pay progression, they wouldn't get anything on their pay progression. So that's,
You know what I mean by that?
That's just
If
not.
he-
So I hit
it's
my
not-
anniversary.
It's
It's,
not what we want. That's not what we want, so that's.
Okay.
Okay.
so if you're at a
We understand.
second tier, no, I want to make sure she understands. If you're at that second tier and you're 1671, that's with your 3%. March is your anniversary for your 3-year top-out pay. Do you go to
They understand, that's all I'm trying to tell you.
1960? No, I want to know. Which one would you go to?
They just said we will continue to negotiate it. That's what they just said.
Oh,
So whatever you're currently being paid right now, right this second, you would add 3% to it. That would be across board to everybody.
But she's asking you, I get what she's
Okay.
asking.
It's okay, it's fine.
It's a
sorry.
Go ahead
clear
and answer.
question,
Go ahead and
and,
answer.
we have a progression in the contract. She's asking you,
Yeah.
would they go right to the top pay then,
On your anniversary.
on your
Yeah.
anniversary?
It's step
Once you reach that step.
Well, I will tell you that I'd have to do the math on the different progressions. So, but, and I could call the clerk's office, because we were talking about that these conversations may come up today, and they're available by phone to make sure that we've done the math right. But, I mean,
okay. I think we understand each other's position on where we're at on wages. What would you like to do next, Curtis?
We have some maintenance safety concerns. You talked about safety too, so I think that we'd like to address some of the maintenance concerns, which some of them will borderline the safety of it, but I'll let Jim break it out to you.
which article? Is there a particular article, Jim?
It would probably just fall under the safety.
It would fall under the safety article
And the hiring.
and the hiring, the position that's been taken on the hiring.
What numbers? I'm sorry.
Safety and
Oh.
training is Article 13. And that is an article that we have provided to them
Okay.
since the
That's what I want to
ratification
make
bill.
sure.
I'll write down notes.
So not, we're sitting here at the negotiating table, but, sometimes you have discussions that are even not necessarily directly in the labor agreement. This is one of those.
Okay.
We have a concern. The hiring practices of the county are, it's very, you're putting tremendous stress on the maintenance department right now. There have been down 2 mechanics, they're now down 2 utilities. You got cleaners that are supposed to clean 20-plus buses a night, and now they put on direction to them that they have to clean 6 buses, what do they call that? The
Major clean.
Major clean. And in the past, in years before, we had 4 cleaners, which eliminated, but now you have, and the second shift's been suffering, and the first shift from losing mechanics and not being able to fill the positions. And it's reflective on our equipment. It's reflective on the way the equipment looks. It reflects on the overall, I mean, we got buses that are, what year?
We're running 20 and 21-year-old buses on the route.
Daily.
Daily, not backup buses, not spare buses. The drivers are actually choosing those buses to run. They're running the route just like
Well, they're being assigned to them.
Yeah.
They're being assigned to them.
And they're running the route just like the 14-mile Eldorados and 15-mile Eldorados are running.
So I guess our concern is, that reflects on our service. I mean, the overall service of the transit system, where people ride that bus, not only do they see the buses are dirty, they're not kept up clean because we don't have enough staff. The equipment, I see, just looking at some of them, some of the things are being jimmied because we don't have parts in the maintenance department. There's a lot of concerns that are going on. I mean, we hear it constantly from the technicians and the employees.
One of the main concerns is not having the fuelers on the property. You're sending master techs and tech 3 personnel down to the fuel island to fuel buses at night. So you're paying somebody $26 an hour to go down there and fuel and pulling him out of the shop, which is cutting the fleet.
Waste of resources.
Cutting the fleet on the maintenance. And sure, I see a posting up there for somebody to get hired on the county board, but that posting's been up there for 3 months now. Does it take that long to hire people?
So when we have people apply, the only thing we really look at is, from our end, is whether or not they meet the minimum qualifications for that job. So if you're not getting a list of people to hire from, that means people aren't applying to that job, or they're not meeting the minimum qualifications. That's what it means. So we don't hold, it's not like we hold people when they come in. As soon as we recognize they qualify, they get sent out to the hiring authority.
So I know you had county employees, technicians apply.
Okay.
And they applied. And then there was a problem. And I immediately addressed it with management and said, look this individual was scared off by some conversations because he had accrued, under the county, he had accrued annual and sick leave, right? Annual and sick leave. And he was scared off because thought he was going to lose that. I immediately approached management to have a discussion and say, hey, this is a guy that wants to transfer from one department to the other. The union's more than willing to have conversations. The response I get was, oh, we got to wait on HR. That's the response we got from management. And so that guy finally left, and then you got another guy that applied. It's not happening. So we don't see an end here. We see individuals just, what it's doing is putting pressure on the rest of the existing employees. It's putting pressure on them on a daily basis to maintain the service.
Well, the leave would transfer. I don't know why that's a question.
Not all of it. He would actually lose some of his vacation hours because when he comes over to ECAP,
Does he have more than 400 annual?
he has 400 annual hours and he has 200 hours of sick time. But when he comes over with his 400 hours, where he's going to fall in seniority, they don't have that many years of vacation hours. So he would actually lose, moving forward, 200 hours of vacation per year.
And
'cause
we
don't
do a
accrue
different
it.
system in our
It's a different
transit
way
system.
of they calculate their vacation. So he's like, well, if I'm going to lose vacation, I'm not coming over there. Because there was no question of whether they were going to pay him out. Was he going to lose it? Was he going to? So he said, well, I'm not coming over there if I'm going to lose it.
We immediately transferred emails with Ed at HR. It became a dying conversation because Ed never got back to us. We said, hey, the union's willing to talk about this. This guy should come. He'd be productive in our maintenance department. It stopped. Conversation stopped. And of course, there was a game played there where they said, oh, that's because the union talked to him. No, the union talked to him and told him, hey, guy, we're on your side. We're going to help you maintain what you have. And we're going to have a discussion. But it was told differently by your maintenance director.
And I hate to hear people being worked out of class. If they're mechanics, they're not fuelers. That's kind of a, if it's an emergency situation, but a day-to-day situation, I would have a problem with it. It sounds like it's a day-to-day situation.
I just wanted to say something whenever you're finished, Curtis. Just for clarification on the specifics with the gentleman. Mike, you did approach me and Ed during one of the grievances in reference to him. Ed began looking into it. I began looking into it, and I believe prior to even that week ending, we got notification that the young man had decided voluntarily to not come to ECAT. So although we reached out to him individually, I know HR did, and I believe y'all also were in coordination and communication with him as well. And we got repeatedly information from him that he had decided not to come over. So prior to HR looking into it, I think, Jen, I don't know if you had just came on or not, to fully find out the specifics of that. We said that there was no intention for him to lose any of his leave. So he made that voluntary decision. I personally reached out to him not once, not twice, several times to speak to him just in case he'd gotten misinformation from someone else, that we were actively working on it. He made it very clear to us that he decided not to come. So now I do acknowledge that there's some issues, I know, with the fueler position. I know that is already being posted. We're addressing one of those fueler positions rather quickly from one of the internal candidates that will be, I'm just waiting, I think, on HR's approval on that, so we can get that process, so we can at least get that posted. I know that we also have the other fuel, I think it's fueler in the mechanic position that's already gone up as well.
Fleet maintenance.
I have a
Fleet
question.
maintenance.
I mean,
So-
fleet trans-
I know that there's been several conversations about what happens if a county employee transfers over to ECAT, in the maintenance department, because of the way y'all's annual leave and sick time and everything is accrued and ours is not. Has that ever been finalized on what happens to that stuff if they come over? I mean, has that conversation come up?
No, I offered
With y'all
to
on if
discuss
they
it, but I was
have
ignored.
600 hours of annual leave and they transfer over into ECAT and they get placed in seniority where they belong, and it comes to, when they do vacation the next year, they're only going to have 2 years vacation, and they have 600 hours of annual leave, is all of that get paid out? I mean, that was the issue with this gentleman coming over, was that he realized, yeah, my annual leave accrues every year, but I know if I come to ECAT, I'm only going to have 2 weeks vacation next year, which means he's going to lose. He was worried with the annual leave, and we were told that, oh, well, that has to be discussed and, for transfers from Fleet or wherever they come from in the county.
Well, he was more.
And that was our concern.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that question because I didn't know this issue was going to come up today. But I can talk with my team about it. And that's, if people are transferring from non-ECAT county positions to ECAT county positions or vice versa, there should be a protocol. We'll figure all that out, right? Won't we, HR?
Because to us,
But we
there's
hope
always going to be an
communication
issue
with the
of,
union on this.
there's going to be an issue of transferring if there's something's not in
Yes,
black and
no,
white.
you're
Or what
absolutely
happens to
right.
your
Yep.
leave if you come over here. Now, if you come from ECAT to a county, you're going to actually gain because your leave will then accrue. It's going to be the other way that's going to be the issue, because you're never going to fill that position at ECAT if it's not in black and white on what happens to their leave.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what the administrator says, we have to have a single workforce really at some point.
Well, okay. So to end this conversation, move on to one that's is important to many people that are sitting here.
Okay.
But to end it, I am concerned about the fleet. I'm concerned about I feel that management has not done a good job of maintaining the fleet and keeping it in condition it should be. I've looked at fleets all over the state. I've seen buses all over the state. I feel like we're not purchasing buses that are that we're not achieving and going after the grants to get us quality equipment. You were successful in getting me back on the bus. When I started to do training, I started looking at those buses, and I started looking at what had been done to those buses. I knew right away. I mean, it just amazes me. And I don't put this on a cleaner. I don't put this on a bus operator or a maintenance, a technician. I put it on the people in charge of that equipment, which is management. And management has done a bad job of maintaining our fleet. And that is just a fact. And I think, most operators have given up in trying to get things corrected on their buses. They've, you can only request it so often, and then a maintenance technician gives up because he doesn't have the equipment or the parts or the items to fix it. You're jimmying things, aren't you?
Well, what we're doing.
Jimmy, no pun intended.
Well, exactly.
You're exactly Jimmy.
Exactly. Well, what we're doing is, we're working understaffed. When you pull people out of the night shift, you got 4 mechanics at night, and a cleaner calls in sick, so you've got, now you're paying a mechanic $26 an hour to clean buses, and then you're also paying a mechanic $26 to fuel buses, then you've only got 2 in the shop.
All right,
And so, yeah, your fleet's gonna run downhill. I mean,
Oh, it is already run down.
I hear it from the drivers. I mean, and I look at them and say that, we're understaffed, we're doing the best we can.
Well, all right.
So the point, Mike, is the process of your hiring practices is slow. It is so slow. And it doesn't make sense to a lot of us, to just get the answer when someone's down to 2 mechanics in the shop and they go, well, when are we going to get some help? HR, that's all we hear. It's in HR's hands.
Yeah, so I've been here 6 months. She's been here 2 months?
Almost.
How many months have you been director?
Permanently, it was November 18th.
Yeah, so I appreciate your comments. I don't think we created this problem.
I think, well, you are in the positions of the people that before you had it, and obviously, we've been preaching this a long time.
And I appreciate, and that's what I'm saying. I hear what you're saying. And I want you to know that we have 1,800 employees, and it is unfortunately deplorable. And I've been very public about this from the dais and other places, the way our HR department has been run at the county.
And there's.
So I am telling you that I know about it, and I am on top of that. So I do not want you to point fingers at me about that.
Well, Ms. Gilly, I also am concerned because I send many emails to you about the concerns that we have about the assaults on these buses that are happening throughout the country and specifically in Florida.
Yes.
And I'm not getting any responses other than,
I have spoken to Miss Ellis, and I have asked her time and time again, just make sure that you monitor and keep, so we have had several conversations about that.
Transit systems across the state have been putting shields and working with the union and working with, we can name over and over. This is the man that was in charge of the property where the gentleman was murdered. And I'm scared that we're going to be reactive on a terrible incident one day. I don't know why we're not talking and at least being in committee, assuring the workforce that even though they're aware of someone being murdered and people being struck in the face and all these things that are happening out there, we're vulnerable out there. We sit there in that seat, we're strapped in. They would feel at least a little better if there was a committee that was working on this, making recommendations to the people in power to look at this. There's a bill in Tallahassee right now, which I wonder what this transit system's position is, but there's a bill in Tallahassee right now, supported by 2 Republicans, that is trying to put shields on all transit systems and make it a felony for the assaults that are happening and various other things in the bill. I'd be curious to see on Tuesday, if our transit system is supporting this bill.
Are you aware of the bill?
I'm aware of the congressional bill, and I'm not aware of the state bill yet.
Okay.
I'll forward it to you.
But session started just a couple of days ago, so we can certainly look at that.
Because I'd like to know your position on it.
So let's move on to the buyout.
Buyout.
My question about the buyout is the letters that were just sent out is in conflict with what you sent us. And we've had this conversation early in negotiations when we started the private-public part. And y'all sent out letters then, and we sent you a letter and all of that. It seems like we're doing the same thing all over again.
I don't know what you mean. I think the letter just simply informs people who deserve to be informed of the nature of the offer. I don't, that was all that was intended, that's all that was done.
What about all the conversations before this? Is that out the window now? Is that about the buyout? All the work and all the discussions over 2 years that we had with the the team and your team and came up with, I mean, we were there. We were there at a final agreement, weren't we? And now, it seems like we're back to square one, day one, for a discussion on the buyout. We have individuals that are waiting to retire. And they're waiting, they're patiently waiting. You know, we appreciate the buyout. We know that a commissioner recommended it. We know that that commissioner is the one that pushed it and wanted it, and we appreciate what he did there by recognizing that transit workers, especially the senior ones that have given their entire life, are walking away from this job with nothing, okay? They're walking away with hardly anything. And, you know, I got a 44-year employee sitting behind me and a 35, and I can go on and on and on. They're sitting here waiting to walk away, but the buyout that was on the table potentially would have gave them a lot more money than what you just offered. When we negotiated prior with under Amy Lavoie and all them and everyone, Mike Crittenden and Eric Kleiner and that whole team.
Can you give me a specific example? Because I think
So-
I was given a number that I believe you gave me the number, the 350,000. Yeah, so 350,000 was the number that we were given.
And we were so what was come out of it is, and I mean, I can pull up the documents and we can look at them, and it basically said it had whoever doesn't take it, right? That money still would apply and would be contributed on to the others to increase their amounts, okay? And we recognize that there would be an agreement that it wouldn't be like just one person would get 350.
Right.
We clearly understood that. We understood, but it was potentially someone could get a good chunk of change, $70,000 potentially, right? I mean, 44 years of service, I think $75,000 is, to me, I would have, you know, the union position was that it also had a system where we would be talking and meeting and giving these people the information, and they would hear the numbers in advance. I feel like all the discussions that were done at the table before have been forgotten and not even transferred to you. I'm just being honest. I mean, we can, you know, we gave you the packet. I don't know where you did with it, but it's in there. It tells you what the plan was. The plan was pretty, we were there. We were there, ready to go, and everybody's looking at us like, what happened to what, you know, we were advising our members as we move forward. We were telling them what the changes were, what we were doing at the table, and how we were moving forward to end this process and give them the opportunity. And the employees were ready, and then it all came to a halt, and it went back to square one and back to, you know, much less amount. We even had 20 years of service as being something that was agreed to in the process, 20 years, rather than 25. Because we emphasized that we had some senior employees, one sitting right here, 20-plus years he's given of his life, and others, you know, a couple others, that one's got 23 years, I think, and that they, you know, they wanted to be a part of the buyout, and we discussed that for 2 years, Ms. Gilly, with the team, with your team. And now it went back to 25, so we eliminated 2 people. And we have a couple that have been waiting so long that, you know, we're putting them in a box, a couple individuals. These individuals are, you know, medically, are standing here going, wait a second, am I going to make this or am I going to be pushed out? And then we had one that wanted the buyout that ended up having to give up, and he retired, right? So he gave up because of the process. And I'm afraid that, you know, if the amount was $350,000, getting to a fair amount, I mean, is the concern that, oh, we don't want to give no one more than $30,000, or is it, if it's 350, it's 350? We can agree to disagree to how many people can ultimately get that. We can, you know, agree. One person? No. 2 people? No. Right? We could go down the line and say 3 people, $100,000? No, that wouldn't be right. But there's a point where you say, okay, 4 people taking, you split it up, everyone can live with that, right? Or 5 people, or 6 people, whatever the number is. We thought it was a simple how to get there.
and I feel like that's what we offered.
No, you specifically offered a proposal that, how did the breakdown?
It was I don't have it.
1.25
1.25 weeks.
Per week.
per
For a
week?
year
Per
of
year,
service.
For 1 year.
So is that saying that if I have about 44 years of service, I get 44
A
weeks,
close
right?
around about almost
No, 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 no.
43,000.
Let me pull up my.
Here.
Is this what you're thinking? I have a calculation.
Oh, yeah.
I can take
That's
that
the
out.
MOE. That's the wage. I've got it. Just-
Yeah, so let's run through a scenario.
83.
Where that one?
Right.
1.5.
Oh, that is,
That's
okay.
not the breakdown.
That's-
I
That's
got.
not right now, and that's what the letter was sent out.
Okay, the letter said 25 years. This says, the last proposal says 20 years.
Yes, sir.
The MOU says
not in
25
this bill.
years.
The MOU says 25, your proposal said 20.
This is the current proposal. This is a revised offer.
So you're
This-
saying you changed from November? Is that what you're saying?
That's why we sent a new Article 42 with the MOU. So this is now out of the contract and in an MOU.
Yeah, this is what I was authorized to provide.
So that is off the table. This is now the proposal for Article 42 of the contract.
So let's run through a scenario. We won't mention any
So
names.
that doesn't apply, no.
No, this is the one that they just gave us and said supersedes the one that they gave us.
Right.
It's the only one that has
Right.
copies of that.
Which is the email that you received. And you sent out to
I
us.
see that one. Is it, oh, you're talking, this one, yeah. Okay. Okay.
So they cut you off, brother.
Hang in there.
It happens to the brothers all the time.
Wow.
All right, through it. This is an important topic. We need to get past this topic because we're just hurting the people that have given their lives to the transit system. They're waiting. They're waiting.
We
Well,
want to
and
resolve it too.
We want to resolve it too, and so does our board. And that is why they agreed to make the offer that we made.
And by the way, our previous agreement, that discussions we had with Amy Lavoy, actually had a plan in place to replace those individuals in a timely fashion. That was incorporated and discussed between Mike Critton and Amy, right?
Yes.
Guys, right, Jay? They had a plan, so we wouldn't find ourselves having 5, 6, 7 people walking out the door, and then you were 7 people short. It was and ensuring that we had people to cover.
Well, I have the calculation here, I'm just trying to find it.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so one of your questions was about the ASE certification allowances, and that is part of the consideration. It includes that. Yeah, so the hourly rate multiplied times the weekly, the hourly rate, which is the weekly pay, multiplied times the 1.25 times their years of service, is how the calculation was done.
Right, exactly. That's how we
And that's what you,
calculate it, right,
that's what
Shay?
you figured.
Yeah, so.
And then ASE certification was in Mr. Wise, Mr. Smith, and Mr. Stanton's.
It was what?
The ASE certification allowance is included in their hourly rate
We
for
didn't get
Wise,
that
Smith,
answer.
and Stanton.
Okay. That was in my email
And-
request, that's right.
And, just so you know, part of the consideration on behalf of the board was that, quite frankly, we're very concerned for Mr. Carter and Mr. McIntyre because of their number of years of service. Obviously, then you have Stan Berry Fillingen, Mr. Stallworth, Ms. Alfredette Williams. And then, obviously Jim and his team are all in the 30s as well in terms of years of service. So, that was part of that's the consideration. Now, there are ways to look at this, and if all of them take it, that does eat up what we've offered. If they don't all take it, then there's probably an opportunity to go to the next tier. But the number I was given was $350,000 to work with.
So,
And that was a
okay.
number that I've been given from,
I just heard something different that I didn't hear before, so let me make sure I understood what you just said. So, are you saying that, you said next tier, that's what caught my attention.
yeah, what
You
I'm
said
saying
next
is,
tier.
is
What does
that,
mean?
what I'm saying
20
is you
years?
gave us, you have given us a number that I have been working on based on our first conversations, which was 350,000. I have no information as to how that number came about or where it came from.
350?
Yeah, but I'm just saying that's the number that I've been historically given. So we tried very hard to work within the parameters of that 350,000. And what I'm saying to you is that if we run into a situation where all of these 11 10 individuals decide not to take the money, then we can certainly have a conversation about the next level. So we went to 25 years and above now, then you would go 24 years and, you see what I'm saying, until you do the 350. but-
And I think what the case is that if we were to put this out and everybody eligible were to take it, it costs more than $350,000.
It's over 350.
So this is putting $350 on the table. This is putting more than $350,000 at risk. So we can't go more than this because when we put this out, not everybody might take it, but we have to plan that they might because they have the right to. So this spends all our money.
So
It essentially spends more than,
if only.
it's more than 350.
If only, I don't know, I don't know how many would take it. I can assume, I can guess.
Yeah.
But let's say 5 take it. Are we going to adjust the numbers so that they get a higher amount?
Or do you then open it up to people who have less years of service?
This is,
So what the board authorized us to do was to provide this to these 10 individuals. And then depending on how that goes, then we could certainly take another conversation back to the board. About, let's say that only 5 take it. We could certainly take a conversation back to the board that says, sirs, we offered to 10 individuals, only 5 chose to take advantage of that opportunity. We have this remaining balance. How would you like us to proceed? Would you like us to bump that to the 5 that chose it? They all get to split it? Or do we go to the next? Do we add a year? Do we add a year? Do we add a year?
And but the fact that you would put all this money on the table and people would divvy it up by who takes it has 2 problems that I can see. One is, we're not actually giving you a benefit that's defined. We're saying it's a benefit that depends on something else that could or could not happen. So we don't have it defined for our purposes, and the person making the decision doesn't have it defined for their purposes. Then another thing that would bother me, I'm just looking at this conceptually, is if I was in that pool of eligible people, everybody who opts would be taking money from me. So
Yeah, you don't want
the benefit would change based on who participated, and we want everybody to feel unencumbered when they just make this decision. They're not doing it with the concern that if I do this, somebody else loses out on something. So everybody gets a defined benefit. Everybody knows what they're getting into. We know what we're spending with this plan. If everybody opts for it, hope everybody does. Then we spent over $350,000. What the administrator was saying is that if less than those people who are eligible opt for it, if there's money left over, we can have a conversation about what to do with that.
I think your numbers are too low, what you're offering
Well,
for the individuals.
Well,
I think, well, I understand.
It's
you sent a letter out.
$350,000.
I don't think you've got responses from anyone. I mean, if you did, I'd love to know if you did, but I don't think you've got any responses.
no, we didn't
I mean,
really ask for
we've made a good
responses.
faith offer. That's what we've done. We've tried to make a good faith offer. And I will tell you honestly, because I am concerned for Mr. Carter and Mr. McIntyre. I'm concerned for all these employees, but I am especially concerned for those two gentlemen. Because I do not understand the promises that they've been made, but on my watch, I'm trying to make a commitment. I'm trying to fulfill a commitment to them that people before me made to them. So I understand that it may not be the numbers that, maybe somebody else committed to them, but I am trying very hard to make a good faith effort because I am concerned for them.
That's Billy Carter.
Yeah, that's gross.
Right.
That's gross. Yeah. I-
I think it's,
44.
So I understand that we were private sector for a long time. And I understand that the county understands that these individuals didn't have state retirement. Right? And now, and in fact, many of the ones we're talking about when you took over couldn't even opt in to state retirement based on their years of service. None of them want to stay 8 more years, right?
right,
To even qualify, right?
Right.
So they went into a 453, I think, 453? 457? 457, sorry, 457. And then I understand that, some of the commissioners, or at least the one specifically I know, took heart to that and understood and respected their service. And knowing that they're in a bind. They're having to make hard decisions right now, which is being 70-plus years old and still drive a bus. But when you, and that's not necessarily just Mr. Carter or Mr. James, by the way, Mr. James McIntyre. It's also, there's others
Oh, I
that are
know.
70-plus years.
I understand.
We probably have several people that are 70-plus years at ECAT that you maybe you're not aware of. But, and the concern is that, they not only want to move on with their life. I mean, I've watched over the years, Ms. Gilly, I've watched a senior person walk off the property. I waved at him when he was walking off the property to get his truck. And an hour later, he died, having a heart attack in his front yard. And I appreciate the county wanting right now to do something for these individuals. But you've kind of put them in a box. They have to decide, am I going to be able to live off of this $43,000? They don't have a real retirement. A lot of them lost a ton of money in 2008 when they got in their 401k. I've said this before, I lost $38,000 in the blink of an eye that day. And my 401k went all the way back down. I felt like I was starting over. And a lot of them, I just feel like they've committed their life to this county like other county employees have, but they've committed their life to transit, which is more important to me. They've committed their life to serving people. And we're just asking you to, let's look at the individuals, let's see if we can get a good number that makes everyone feel comfortable for them. Because I can tell you the numbers that are on the table right now, from what I've spoken to them, all of them are going to say, well, I guess I'll be 78, 79 years old until they push me out, driving a bus.
Hey, point of clarification, If we stuck to the agreement the way it was originally written, the one that y'all agreed to, the people would get less than what we're offering them now.
Okay, so we agreed based on years of service in that.
With an
Some would
overall
make
total
more
of
based on their years of
350,000.
service. Some would make more based on their years of service. We broke it down the same way, but we had some individuals, now, that's assuming that everyone would take it, right? Okay. We wanted to reward the people with the most years of service and then break it, just like you have it by your weeks, whatever it is,
1.25.
1.25? Same type of thing, but at a larger amount. And I know you're saying it's less, but it was less for us, I think it's less for, potentially for someone like 20 years of service is what you're talking about.
Well, it would be less for everyone, just considering the totality, because the agreement was still the $350,000. So regardless, it would still end up being less even if you divided that equitably. So how it stands now is the point that Madam Moore was making, is that we're actually going above the original agreed upon $350,000 to give people more than what they would get.
So I'm going to be a realist here,
Okay,
and I'm going to say
fine.
this. We already know some people can't take it,
Okay.
right up front. Jim Stanton, Alan Wise, these guys are too young, they're in their 50s, okay? They're not interested in taking it, right? They got more to give to transit, and they've made it clear that they're not going to take it, right? And there's others that have said that too, that are in the group. Some have said, no, you know what? But we know, we have an idea, we haven't locked in an exact number, but we have a good idea of which ones need to take it or want to take it. But under your program that you put forth, they are going to have to say probably no. I mean, I don't want to speak for them, but they've spoken to me, some of them have, and said, can't do it. That's not gonna, I'm better off, I make more, and I might as well work another year, and I'll make more
I'll make more in that year.
in that year than what is being offered to me. And I'm just trying to help them move on. I think the problem here is the lack of communication and that goes on. The lack of communication of sitting across and us being straight up with each other and saying, this is who, she said she named 2 people. I can
And I
name,
have all their names.
and I can name a few more that are definitely, for various reasons, are really concerned about whether they're going to make it going forward, okay? And some with less than 25 years as well.
Well, the problem is this. We have we have the same respect for these individuals. We have the same concerns for these individuals. We wouldn't be talking about this program if we didn't. I applaud everybody involved in this process. Not me, everybody else, not me. I'm not applauding myself.
Pat
but
yourself on the
you,
back.
Mike, and the county for finding a way to get to FRS. So most of the people that you have in your bargaining unit now are going to have an opportunity to get a defined benefit, one of the best programs in the country, one of the best in the country. So, good. It's good.
Go, let's go, keep going. You interrupted.
You don't want to be at FRS?
I wouldn't know, no.
Well, I'm
You don't
not,
know his
wait, well, no, I'm sure nobody's paying retirement like the ATU, so.
I'm actually in Marta's. I'm in Marta's.
Well, we don't know about that.
I'm in the defined.
Oh, in MARTA?
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Well, MARTA. So, when you craft a program like this, we have to have a commitment of funds to cover it. And we have to have a benefit that is offered to people along the lines of eligibility. We can't game it and say, somebody might not take it. We can't game it and say, we know someone's not going to take it. We have to construct a benefit that's offered to everybody equally. I think we have to do that for tax reasons, to tell you the truth.
But Mike,
Legally. But the administrator said that if we put this out and we find that people do not take it, then she's willing to have a conversation about it going
I
forward.
think we need to have a conversation about more money, and here's why. I'm listening to both sides. It goes right back to what you said earlier. This county has made 73 years of taxpayers' money that didn't benefit not one worker at this end now. So if you take the ones that are 70 years old now or better, they're still working for you, you provided profit to a private agency that walked away with millions of dollars, and your own workers couldn't walk away with a decent pension plan, whether it was 401k or FRS or whatever it is. That's disgraceful to sit here and tell us on the front side that, hey, we have to do our due diligence with taxpayers' money, and now, I'm just making a statement.
Yeah, okay.
Making a statement. I have a right to my statement.
Yeah, go ahead.
And so, it's very distasteful, now that we have workers that have provided for their whole working life for this county has managed the private and the public, so the FRS is for future employees, good, thank you. But however, that does nothing for the people that have provided this service for this county all these years, all right? And yes, they work for that private company that you managed, that you put RFPs out, and that you gave big profits to. Big profits, not little profits, big profits. And what you did is not offer the workers anything. So those this contract that you talked about, that you say we can't agree to because it has to be county employees now, it's just, I'm gonna use my expression, you shitted on them then, you're shitting on them now.
Okay, so I specifically did not go to this place on purpose, but now that you brought it up and you put it on our lap without merit, now that you put it on our lap without merit, I'm going to. Their retirement benefit was a mandatory subject of bargaining over all these years that the ATU negotiated into contracts. The ATU has responsibility for that, not the county. The county was not a party to that contract. They did not define, was not a party to the retirement. You guys were.
Sure you was.
So their retirement benefit that they're talking about
Do not try to walk
yours.
out. It was the county's RFP.
You're interrupting.
I'm sorry, I knew you was gonna say that, and I love it, because he said he didn't mind. I mind. So, at the end of the day, the county's responsible for the RFPs, they're responsible for every single thing. The transit workers, the county workers, everything. Just because you put a private sector in there to throw a little fluff doesn't mean anything. You're the responsible party.
You negotiated the contract.
No, you're the responsible party.
You negotiated the contract.
Yeah.
You defined the
We
benefit,
sure did.
not me.
We sure did.
You signed off
We sure
on
did.
every single
You didn't
one of
offer
those
them FRS.
benefits.
You could have put in RFP for FRS. We can go down this road. I guarantee you I won. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. There's other transit agencies in this county.
No.
I mean, in Florida that do it.
A much better
Yes, they
benefit
could
for
have.
those
You
transit workers.
can't make an FRS employee not a state employee, county employee,
All right, sure.
not a public employee.
Yeah.
Can't.
Yeah, you know why you can't? Because you don't advocate for it. Let's see how far you advocate for this transit bill.
Oh, let's go back to, I'll go back to all your collective bargaining agreements, I'll find all your signatures with those
You see
retirement
my
benefits
sig-
in
you
it.
see
You did
signatures.
it. Now, we are willing to
I bet
try
you-
to fix this situation that
I
you
can go
caused.
back in this county and I can look at, I'm not gonna say transit, I'm push transit workers aside. And the suppression of the county workers is just ridiculous in your signatures on it.
You know what's right.
He said something.
I do know what's right.
He misspoke on one thing about saying putting
Yeah.
FRS
Right.
under an RFP.
Right.
He-
We're
that is
fixing
correct.
your problem.
That he
Look,
misspoke there.
no, I didn't
But he's
misspeak.
right
No, I
about
didn't
one
misspeak.
thing.
No, I did not
You could have put in an
misspeak.
RFP a much better.
I did not speak.
for
Because here's what
Yeah,
could have
you
happened.
negotiated
Here's what could have happened. The same thing
We
that we
tried.
talked about at the beginning.
were blocked.
You could have
We tried as
advocated
hard
for
as
it.
we could.
Oh, come
You
on.
could have advocated for FRS to go and put it in.
Right,
I
you had
didn't
all
misspeak.
sorts of things that you could have done.
Yeah, and there's a
that-
whole bunch
and
of
you
things.
didn't do it.
You
So listen, don't come to the table and say it is the county's fault. I didn't say it was the ATU's fault. You started it.
Look, I'm okay with it, because at the end of the day, you, just like this
got
bill,
courage.
You own the situation.
just like Hart, I don't care. I'm willing to take the fight on. I
Go
don't
ahead.
mind, because just like Hart, when we had problems, they got a bill out here now to correct the problems and make changes. You could have did the same thing with the pension for these workers. So don't sit here and talk about what you couldn't do. Let me tell you what you can do.
No.
Let me tell you something.
What you can do is stop running as a county.
Mike,
And
let
do
me
what
say
the
this
hell
to
is
you.
right with the taxpayers' money for workers. That's what you can do.
Hey, I think.
So I didn't misspeak. I know exactly what I'm talking about.
Mike, let me say
Pull every
something to you.
contract, I'll pull every contract.
Pull it up.
Let me say something.
And I'm gonna tell you.
I'm going outside.
I don't know how you guys sleep at
Transit
night.
workers too.
I don't know how you sleep at night.
I've been trying for years to get the paratransit workers.
couldn't sleep if I was
Decent
you.
health care and retirement, right?
Change the subject.
And I went to the RFP system, and I sat there with county individuals, your county
Go
team,
ahead and change the subject.
got it in the RFP. And to this day, they've manipulated, and those paratransit drivers, you can go down there right now, and 90% of them don't have health care. They're driving around with vehicles without health care or a pension.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'll
You're changing
count-
the subject.
I'll
The
count-
thing about it
Shake your head,
is,
but
I got it,
we
I got
know
it,
where
I got it.
that all of this
We need to
comes.
I got it. I'm gonna use Kirsten's words.
Okay.
Guess what?
Sorry, my
We
name
want-
is
We want,
Ms. Hewell.
our counter is, we want $1 million on the table to
That's
spread
good.
across the table.
That's
And we'll
good.
give it to you in writing, and we'll give it to you.
That's good for-
What we want, instead of 350, so we can make it where people that are in that range, we'll put more money on the table and we'll give you a counter. We'll do that today.
Okay,
matter
good.
of fact.
We- That's
So
fine.
since you say it's all negotiable, we'll let the workers see where you're at with putting the money on the
Good,
table.
good. And
That's the best way we can do it.
Good, good. Yeah,
And we'll negotiate it.
Explain, yeah.
And we'll
good.
put our
Explain-
signature on it.
Explain that to them, how that's getting us closer to a contract. That's good. Don't talk anymore about people who are waiting out there when you come in here today after saying $350,000
No,
is
we
enough
said
money,
more.
And
We
now
said
you're making
more
$1 million.
from day one. We
Good.
said more from
Good.
day one.
Good.
You know that. We said more from day
Hey,
one.
you can do that.
We said more. The paperwork is what it is.
Everybody knows what's.
We've asked for more, just so you know. We asked for more on day one. Right? And our conversations then were about, there were some people that wouldn't take it, and therefore the numbers would be increased.
Yeah,
However,
okay. Someone put down.
well, we will
The
send a counter.
delay is due to the ATU.
Oh, that's fine, that's fine. That doesn't intimidate me. As long as I'm doing the right thing for workers and I sleep at night. So the delay, if it's delaying it, means that they'll get a decent quality of life out of it in retirement, then I don't mind delaying it. That's my job.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be delayed if you put the money on the table. So the delay is really you. We can move to the next thing, because we'll counter it. It won't look like it does now. Thank you.
We'll look forward to that.
Did you want to walk through any of the ones that we provided you last time? Article 7?
You know, after
take a
that,
lunch?
yes, after that lively discussion, perhaps it would be best to break for lunch.
What time is it? I don't even have a clue
It's
what time.
12:30.
Oh, I know. Sorry.
Okay.
But we will, after lunch, we will, be prepared to go through it and see what we can work through and what we can agree on. Hopefully we can
Be back at 1:30
do
then.
that.
Okay. Thank you.
Or we can be back at 1, whatever you want.
Well, we're cooperative, just because we disagree and we do that.
Okay, what's next?
We were gonna, y'all were gonna go over the articles that y'all provided to us earlier.
Okay.
And hopefully we can work through some of them.
Okay,
I think that was the group of 7, 10, 13, 20, 25, 31, 33, 42, 40.
yep. Let's start with Article 20.
20? Page 9.
So this would, this language is underlined, it's all new. It recognizes that we will provide group health, accidental death, dismemberment, long-term disability, short-term disability, life insurance, dental and vision insurance. At the coverage and cost is provided to the county employees generally. We have one plan. It is agreed that, that there's a county employee benefits committee and the ATU for this unit will be guaranteed an appointment of at least one representative. There may be more, but you're guaranteed at least one. We also picked up language that we had talked about earlier about the county providing a felonious assault bond for bus operators. And we agree that we will go into the market, obtain that bond within 1 year.
I think they currently, Tanya, don't you currently have that coverage? I believe that was,
Section 320?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's
You
over.
failed to list how much it was for in your proposal?
Yeah, and so,
whatever the current coverage is, you know.
Why wouldn't you write it in there then? Why wouldn't you put $100,000 in?
Is that what it is?
so having a $100,000 policy is one thing, and making it achievable without being dead is another thing.
Yeah, that's exactly.
We've run into, I don't know what yours is, but we've run into a lot of transit felonious assault policies, and you just about got to be dead before you can receive it. So, we'd like to have a look at it, what the current one is, so we can understand what's in it.
Well, I think we can do that for you, sure.
Can do it.
Article 25, I think we've been through this a number of times. Article 25 has language that is generally applicable to county employees. It just has to do with what happens when the county experiences a civil emergency. It allows us to suspend certain provisions of the agreement during the time of the declared emergency. Hurricane. So, that's 25.
Hold on, Mike. May I ask a
Sure.
Question on 25.
Yeah, please.
What was wrong with the one we had before where you actually fixed TAs through the entire article? Why, what is the issue there? I don't understand what the issue was and why it was good back on December 17th, 2018, and where was the other date? I have to look. There's another date that was TA'd by Ms. Lavoy. Why was it okay then, but now that language is not okay now?
I need to get you the language, but most of the counties that I've had conversations with are putting language in terms of making sure that all employees are available for different duties during an emergency. So, and I could get the bill number that we're trying to implement, but you may have employees that could be assigned to do something different during that time frame if we all have to work together to survive through an emergency like this. We may not just need a transit worker to do transit work. We may need them to help us do something else.
Like a call center, answering calls. for the
Citizen
public.
services.
This is relatively standard language, and I think all of our union contracts, and to have something that is specific, particularly to what was in, what's referenced as this attachment A, would be so restrictive. It's questionable that it could be implemented during an emergency, that it would be practical. There needs to be more flexibility. But two, this is the standard language that's in, I think, in all of the contracts.
We're transit workers.
So how many of your other county workers have passenger endorsements in their CDLs?
I can't answer that question. You'd have to ask someone else.
So the point I'm making is when you want to move large bodies of people into safety, put them in the shelters, you're going to be wanting transit workers to do that, correct? Transit workers are the ones that are going to be moving those individuals. The language in the previous TA contract specifically lays out a structure of how we implement the work out to individuals based on seniority and based on selecting it in advance, so when the emergency comes, we're not rushing to figure out how to get the work out and how to cover the work. Trust me, I've been through this 25 years. I've seen hurricanes. Matter of fact, the first one I saw was Hurricane Erin, moving all the way through. I've seen chaos by management, and I've seen structure. And the structure came because we had language in place that we worked on. I've witnessed management fire transit workers because they didn't have a hold of what was going to happen. And I've seen where some management followed the structure, we worked together and put together, and now we have language that is put in place that everyone follows. And I'm not saying that if you want to have someone answer a phone you're probably not going to get an argument out of us, right? But you said, using county employees, you kind of insinuated that we want to be able to use county workers anywhere we need them. But the fact is, you can't take every county employee and put them in a city bus to transport large amounts of bodies, because they don't have a passenger endorsement. So you
I don't
can't,
think that's what this says. I mean, I'm sorry if that's how it's interpreted, but I don't think that's what this says. I'm not going to take one of my folks that has a CDL, and do that.
I guess my point is, did you even look at our language? I mean, Ms. Ellis, did you look at our language? You've been around when we negotiated, when we prepared this, when we worked over this. You've been around a long time. You know what this language does to make things run smooth during an emergency.
I understand your point, so that we do have an emergency management operations committee that is actually going to do exactly what you're talking about, and it would be in conjunction with any union that has a labor agreement in terms of making the appropriate assignment. So exactly what you're talking about doesn't happen when we're chaos and just running around. So we can say these people would be designated to this function during an emergency. These would be designated to this function during an emergency.
Well, you're
That
going to take
makes sense.
actual transit employees out of that
No.
decision-making.
No, I just
The ones
said
that
that-
actually do the work.
I just said in conjunction with management and the union. So any representative that would want to, speak up to that could say. But at the actual emergency, no, you're not going to be able to select what you want to do.
Mike, just because I know that when I came to ECAT in '04, during Ivan and Katrina and all those other different disasters, I'm not seeing where this is saying that the same practice that we currently do is not going to happen.
That's what it says, it's scratched out.
Well,
It's eliminated.
it's actually missing all of it.
I just see one page of it.
It's
Right, that's why you only
It's
see
all
one.
scratched.
It's all scratched out, and the rest of it is scratched out, and they just want the first two paragraphs.
And we've got an article over here that had like 6 pages. I'm not questioning what you put on this right here. I'm not questioning that. I see that. What I'm questioning is the rest of what has been worked on in the past. It's like you completely ignored it. And did you look at it? Let me ask that first question. You did.
I question it to the point of police officers do police work, firefighters do firefighters work, transit workers do transit workers work. I don't know what you expect us to do outside of that. I really don't. And I would have several concerns if you told me what you wanted us to do. Call center work. Not everybody's customer service skills may be whatever it is, but unless you training us ahead of time on something.
Yeah.
Just to say because we have a civil emergency, we're going to send you out to do something. Sometimes that becomes unsafe. Just depends. So I can't even make an argument because you just say you wanted the sole discretion to put me anywhere. Anywhere is anywhere. So.
Okay. Well, I'd say that duly noted, duly
I
noted.
just have a problem with it being anywhere.
And Curtis, just for correction, even in '04 during Ivan, operators as well as myself, even though I was in marketing at the time, we worked in the makeshift call center at ECAT, far as the evacuation, far as making sure that was properly done. Now that we're under the county, they have a separate call center at the EOC, so that may not be practical now, as before we had our own separate, the conference room was made into a makeshift call center. Ms. Wanda, you remember paratransit came over, we were answering the phones, making sure folks were getting evacuated properly. So that's my interpretation, unless I'm thinking differently when you say call center, not a what would be considered, say, a separate entity organization's call center. So I'm not sure, but that's
And it-
what
and it
I
would
envision
depend
a
on the
call center to be.
emergency As to what the issues are. I'll also look for the statute.
Because ultimately, that call center was to make sure that we had the proper individuals assigned to make sure folks were getting picked up. Richard Dobler was in there. We were, making sure things were moving and shaking. So that's my interpretation of a call center, to make sure that the calls were made, to make sure that we could actually pick the people up to go to the shelters.
Yeah, and I'm not going to deny that, we were allowing, our members to answer calls because they were transporting, it was, the information was being relayed to transit people to move to a dispatcher who was then picking up individuals and getting them to shelters. But this kind of insinuates that we could do anything. Again, I'm just so concerned of what I've seen in my own experience in history. The county didn't do a very good job over the years of ensuring that the transit system, when it came to an emergency, was clean and consistent in what they were doing. So the management teams, the individuals, the union, we worked forward, we came forward with language that not only were we prepared, but we were also prepared after the hurricane. And we had a system in place. It allowed people to get home, secure their homes, secure their families. You know, it was, you know, this is vague. This is, I mean, all I see out of this is a moment where someone says, no, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and they're like, what about my home? What about my family? We've already addressed those issues in our language and given them the chance to secure. I saw 3 individuals be fired by previous management in the county that were long-term employees that you know as well as I know are still working here today because the union fought and got their job back because there was no communication during an emergency situation. And there was a 5 coming in. The thought was there was a 5. I think it downgraded to a 3 at the time. But they panicked. They got nervous. They ran out. They were afraid for their own family, and they wanted to get their family out of harm's way. And ultimately, from that moment, we came away with language that now gives them the ability to secure their family and gives them, they know when they're obligated to come in and do the work, where they got to make themselves available, how a shift that they can do that.
Which they pick by a seniority basis. So they know that if a hurricane or whatever the emergency is, they know that, okay, I'm on this second shift. I have to report. It's mandatory no matter what the emergency is.
Clearly, they
But
understand.
if there's not a designated time or when they're supposed to be here and we're basing it on just whenever you say we come in, it's going to be
Panic.
crazy.
Yeah, we've got our shifts already picked in the maintenance department as well. And we will, as soon as an emergency comes up, we already know we're going to 3 shifts. It's already picked and planned out.
And that language is already in our current emergency operations plan, our hurricane preparedness plan that safety puts together. All of that same language is still in there as far as when the shifts are, when it's deemed an emergency. So I don't, you know, I think we're still talking
We're
about
more
the same
comfortable
thing.
with being in a labor agreement, because you can change that anytime you want.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
Article 31. You can go whichever one you want to.
Well, 31's fine with me.
I think we discussed 31 some during the last session.
Page 11.
So, Arlene, I saw you highlighted a lot of stuff in here. Do you want to jump in?
I think me and Shay both can. 'cause we both
Yeah, I
worked
chime
on
in
this
here
one,
now. I'm listening.
They're kind of experts on a couple articles here, 31 and 33.
Let me look real quick. So the first question I have is, some of it's kind of contradicting each other, because in section 1, you say there'll be a general choose-up posted for bidding once every 4 months. But then later on, when you go down, it says it'll be posted 3 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
So is it every 4 months, or is it 3 times a year that we're gonna have a choose-up?
Every 4 months would be 3 times a year.
But we also have special, and so, I mean, are we gonna just stick with what we agreed to with the months, or are y'all gonna change it and say, oh, no, we're gonna change it to these 4 months instead of that? I just wanna clarify.
Arlene, on that second time, you said it was every 3 months, where are you looking?
She's at the,
I'm in section 1.
actually, it's section 1, bullet 1, then section 2,
The general
at the
choose-up
general
bid.
choose-up, yeah. Just so they can put it together. Let's see what you're talking about.
But they're not gonna go there.
Okay, I just wanna make sure. Yeah, yeah.
So was your question was the language we're recommending that every 4 months, or was it every three times a year?
No, I'm good. I reread it, but I do have one question. Section 1, under general choose-up, it's the last sentence, 10-hour run assignments will include assigned days off and will not be subject to a choose-up. Can you clarify that for me?
All the runs should be subject to a choose-up.
Well, that's what I'm assuming. That this is saying the 10-hour runs will not be subject to a choose-up.
Maybe that's, we can discuss, but I'm assuming that all the runs are based on the choose-up.
Maybe I'm wrong. I thought that meant 10-hour run assignments included assigned days off. So the days off weren't subject to a choose-up? Is that
We
correct?
do have 10-hour jobs that have assigned days off.
Is that what it's supposed to mean?
Yeah, that your assigned days off are determined, are already in the
Right.
choose-up. They're not, you're not
So you're not
choosing your.
picking your days off?
Yes.
Okay, that's not how it.
Okay, that's- it kind of
Just wanna
reads a-
clarify that
Yeah.
we're-
Yes.
Okay.
There's some 8-hour jobs that's like that
That
as
have
well.
assigned days off,
Yeah,
and some that you pick your days off, so that's why I didn't know.
that's why I kind of threw up that
Okay,
there when it
yeah, that
said
does kind of,
Mm-hmm,
by singling it out, it makes it sound like
exactly,
the other
yeah.
ones are.
Like it's, yep, yep.
So can I go back to section 1? Is it, and you scratch completely through regularly scheduled weekday jobs, Saturday and Sunday jobs, regular jobs, extra board, and days off shall be chosen based on the full-time operator's seniority standing. 10-hour run assignments will include assigned days off, but will also be chosen based on seniority standing. You've scratched all the way through that. Can you explain your thought process of scratching all the way through that for me? What is your intent there?
I think it's saying the same,
It's a duplication.
Well,
because the run assignments, you still choose them based on the choose-up based off seniority.
It's a duplication.
so you've moved it down where in the
It's
section
just
1?
under section 1.
Under section 1? What about section 2? Do we still have the privilege of examining jobs and schedules? Or is that going to just be like, here it is, this
Look
is
under
it?
section 2, Mike.
Is it there? I'm asking. Yeah. I see that's why I was saying it, because under section 2, it looks like it's the sole discretion of the transit director, right?
It says a designated union official will be permitted to review the choose-up list and seniority list prior to posting.
It doesn't say may, it says will.
Well,
Doesn't say shall, does it?
No, it's.
No, it's
will be permitted.
Will?
The intent has changed. Section 1, the intent has changed from your section 1 and vice versa. The words change, it means something different to us, that's all we can. No sense us talking about it, we'll counter it, but changes, a lot of the intent reads different, so. No sense us beating it up, we understand what you.
Okay, then
So-
where do you want to go?
Before you continue, I just want to say it for the record. Transit Systems the management has not had a good history of maintaining preparing these bids and putting out, they've relied on the assistants. I know that there's been talk of you going out and getting some kind of system that would help you put together bids, that you would actually have some kind of program that would help
Dispatching
that.
software.
The software. But until that's in place, I don't even know why we're addressing this, because I don't think the system's broke, but that's okay. Am I wrong? I don't think the system's been broke on this at all. But that's for the record. I mean, I haven't seen where this has ever been an issue before. I mean, other than just both sides working on it, cleaning it up, and moving on. So I just don't know why there's even an effort to change this, but maybe it's on the next page. I'll keep looking.
Okay. Well, like Curtis said, you get to counter that, so that's good. We'll look forward to that. What about Article 33? Curtis, is that the same kind of thing?
I don't know. I don't know the extra board here as well as I do in other places, so.
Uh-huh. Do you have any questions about 33?
They may have some.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm still looking at 31.
Section 5.
The scratched out one or the one that's there? Sorry.
The section 5, you've scratched out prior to 10 a.m. the day of the sign-up sheet is closed.
The A, section 5A.
Above that paragraph before.
Okay.
Section A. All operators, extra board and regular, must sign up on the extra work sign-up sheets posted by the county for each day. They are available and desire to work extra work, and then you scratch through the rest of that. So when does the board actually close for the day where you can't sign up anymore? And when do they pull it to assign the work for the following day?
And isn't that what it's saying in
It says sign, and if you look down under A, it says sign-up sheets will be posted by dispatch no later than 10 a.m. So I'm reading that as you're posting it by 10 a.m. When are they taking it down so people can no longer sign up?
I'm reading this, and the operator assignments will be posted by dispatch no later than 2 of the same day.
So it's posted at 10, so they have from 10 to 2 to sign their name up to work?
I think that's what that says, yeah.
And that was standard language.
No, before it was, they removed the priority, by 10 a.m., close of business 10 a.m. the day prior is when they close the board. You can no longer sign up to work after 10 a.m. the day before, was the prior language.
Well, the only thing that I added is underlined, so if it says that the be posted by dispatch no later than 2 p.m. of the same day, that was in the.
That's correct, I'm talking about the 10 a.m., because if you scratch through the one in the pen above it.
It's required at 10 a.m. of the day.
That needs to stay, because that's when they pull it for the next day, so they can do the board and have it posted by 2 p.m.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why I
it means
understand you
differently.
scratch through 10 a.m.
Yeah.
All right, I think they can be worked out.
We can look at them.
Who prepared this? Did you taken away the entire process of what we prepared in the MOU? Is that what they're doing?
Which page?
Is that what you
What
said?
page are you,
We're taking the whole MOU away?
The old one.
The old MOU?
Yeah.
that was put in the proposal?
Only question I have is, who's modifying this? Is it a transit person
Yeah, I was just
modifying this, or is it?
It's
Or attorney.
no, it's a combination.
Yeah, we were.
And looking at other transit contracts throughout the state with other transit systems.
Unionized?
Yes.
ATU?
Which union was it?
ATU, the ATUs in Broward, Palm Beach County, and Gainesville.
Broward? Gainesville and where?
Palm Beach County, Palm Train,
West
West Palm Beach, yeah.
We'll pull them.
I'd like to have some of the things they got in those contracts, though.
Yeah, there are some
Their
things that's on
contracts
there.
look like
very-
transit contracts, though, if I
Yeah,
remember
but
right.
we may put some stuff on the table that y'all don't have, which
Yeah.
is quite a bit. But
I have
No,
them.
they just-
I actually have their contracts with me,
They
but
So do I.
scratched through the whole MOU dated 2/16, so.
I saw it.
So no other questions, we understand.
The safety, I think we talked about earlier today.
Which article?
13?
This is Article 33.
Which you did.
I'm sorry.
Which article was that?
13.
13.
13, thank you.
See,
Thank you.
Jim, earlier you brought up Article 13. Was there a specific area 13? I don't recall. We kind of got to that point.
Well, as in the old contract, it says that every technician will be trained on all the equipment that we get, and training will be made available. I didn't see it, and it's not being followed as of today, but.
Is this the article that, oh, there it is, and I see it, Accident Review Board scratched out. What did you replace the Accident Review Board with? I'm trying to look here.
The county accident review board.
Incident Review Board procedures.
And we ain't.
Oh, the Incident Review.
Yeah.
And we're back to this long discussion we had before. You know, that's the hard part about this whole process for me, is that we've had these conversations before, we've negotiated. The only faces that have changed are on your side of the table, so here we are, back at it again. I've watched your side for the past 2.5 years almost. The faces changed. Incident Review Board. So, on the Incident Review Board, we're going to be having individuals that are who? That are reviewing our accidents, that are tied to transit? Do they get the same training we do? Do they go through the same classes we go through in safety classes? Do they understand? You know, I feel like we had a TA on this article too before. Okay.
So, Section 5. Can you explain what you did in this section for me?
My understanding that that's for any incident or accident that happens, that an employee is expected to turn in an incident form. If it's a,
If somebody throw a rock at the bus.
throw a rock at the
No,
bus.
You got to
Section
go
5
on,
was
right?
crossed out. It was about training county.
Oh, you talking about the one?
The one above it. Oh, I'm sorry, I was reading that one.
I was.
And that's the one Jim was talking
Yeah,
Jim was
well,
talking about.
I mean,
But no, that was different. He was talking about maintenance. This is operators.
no, that
you're right.
actually needs to be, that needs to be.
So I'm not sure, because it's
Maybe it's,
replaced with a new Section 5, but I didn't see where it was placed at anywhere else in here. So I'm asking, where did that change from? We're not training operators no more?
no, we can actually, I mean, I don't know if that's been moved to another section or not. I don't have to,
No, another article.
I haven't seen.
It was, I'm missed over.
There's
The whole entire section has
There's
basically been
another
scratched.
article about maintenance education and training.
Yeah, I
No,
know.
this is about
Okay.
operators, this is operators, this is the bus drivers.
I keep flipping back and forth.
All right, well, we'll take that into consideration for the restoration of that sentence. We certainly are committed to training our operators.
I'll just make sure we didn't put it in there.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if it was put in a different section.
So here's, you made a comment about me trying to drag out negotiations. Crossing out all of the things that worked for us and expecting us to change over to some of this other stuff is gonna tie us up more than anything I can tie up. 'Cause everything that you have is crossed out, the entire section. And some of it is critical things that it makes me look like you guys didn't even look at it. And I'm not saying you didn't, I said it makes me. But how do you cross out a whole section about training folks, and then when I ask you about it, don't even realize it?
Well, I didn't say we didn't realize it.
Yeah.
I said we'll
very
consider restoring it.
Yeah, you said that, but my original question was that, and nobody even knew what I was talking about.
Well, we thought you were, when you said there's 2 5s, there's one that's struck and then there's one that is renumbered. And when we went to section 5 and asked about section 5, that's what I went to. You asked what's going on with section 5, so we went to the section 5 that exists in our proposal.
You said it's 2 section 5s?
Well, one's struck, one's renumbered. Yeah, look below, the struck section 5, there's a section 5.
And that's my point. That was my point. You crossed out something critical, you renamed it, you took away something that was the heart of safety. The heart of safety is training somebody how to drive new equipment. That's the number one safest thing you can do. So I'm not gonna belittle or whatever. When we look at everything, it's just about crossing it out and making it, I don't know, making it whatever.
Right, and I think that the reason why they got crossed out is because there's language in section 1, section 2, that the second paragraph in section 2, all about training, having training, mandating training, conducting training.
That's 2 different things, though. See, that's what I'm talking about. You got to understand transit to understand that training for new equipment and safety training is 2 different things. So I can tell whoever's doing it ain't really understanding transit work. They're just looking at it and reading it from words, the word safety training. That's not the industry we live in and what it means.
So you're asking for more, like the more specific types of training to be spelled out? Because I think the interpretation was just when it said that there would be required special safety and training meetings, that it would encompass all of that. But y'all want to include, keep the language of the spelled out specific trainings to ensure that everyone's on the same page? I'm just trying to clarify that.
Section 5 and Section 2 mean 2 different things.
Yes, sir. So I see what you're saying in terms of it needs to be spelled out, not operate under the assumption that all these different types of trainings fall under that umbrella of what's stated in Section 2.
Yeah, this is not, there's reasons why this stuff is in here.
Okay.
And
You
somebody,
fell under assumptions, you can get in trouble.
That is true.
yeah, and so, I don't know how to explain it, but you guys want to change transit language into regular language, and it's not the same. It's not practical. That's all I'll tell you. It's not practical. It's not city and county work at all, and it's not practical. It's transit work.
Next one? What's the next one?
Next one, I guess, is, we talked about miscellaneous and general provisions earlier today.
About 7 and 10.
No, we have
Got
not.
7 and 10. You can go to 10.
I said 10.
42 we talked about today.
Yes.
10.
Job postings and promotions.
Any questions on 10?
So I'm assuming, by looking at this, that you've taken away the process that we had in place of promoting paratransit employees up to full-time transit, mass transit employees. Is that correct? Is that what that's saying?
I believe it's consistent that they have taken out that piece, if that's your question.
So what does Section 3 mean now? What's the qualifications?
I mean, it's a little bit shorter than what it was previously, just like it's just one sentence. The applicants must meet the applicable job qualifications as posted by the county.
Okay, so what's our qualifications?
For which particular job?
I don't know. It was spelled out before, now it just says that.
That's why it's not spelled out, is because it's applicable to all jobs, not just an operator's position. So all the language about the CDLs wouldn't necessarily be applicable to all of the jobs that are considered under the bargaining unit. So that's why it just kind of stipulates that whatever the minimum requirement is for that job, the person has to be minimally qualified in order to be hired into that job. And so instead of spelling it out for one specific position, it's so it can be applicable to all positions under. It's keeping y'all as a collective instead of individualizing the CDL piece.
Well, it has different provisions. In the maintenance section, you have to meet a qualification, and then once you're there, you have to meet, or you can meet other ASC certifications, and that's spelled out in the contract. Bus operators is definitely the dominant position, because it is a transit company. Everything else is a support team to that. And it's probably no more than 3 to 4 other classifications, but I'm
And they have
curious.
separate articles. So it's just ensuring that this particular article can be applicable to the entire collective bargaining unit, and then there's specific articles that it speaks specifically to the different positions. Does that make sense?
I understand.
Okay.
Doesn't mean I agree.
Yeah, I say
I
that.
just want to make sure, because, obviously I negotiated the contracts before, and when I did it, I also tried to look out because, transit workers are transit workers, and paratransit workers are transit workers, whether you look at them as a private contractor, which I think is a huge mistake, knowing the way the condition of the vehicles that they have there are falling apart slowly as well, and the problems they have over at that location as well, where the employees have terrible benefits and low pay. But with that being said, we try to incorporate the ability for those individuals to move up and have a path to moving into a position in transit that would give them the opportunity to better their lives, especially since the county has been consistent in trying to ensure that a private contractor runs that paratransit system, which is historically showing that it's awful.
That language is still in there about the paratransit. I just want to make, because you asked that question earlier, it does say paratransit operator applicants will be considered for the vacancy before accepting outside applicants.
Will be considered.
Well, okay, so the county will consider other qualified county employees and paratransit operator applicants for the vacancy before accepting outside applicants, which means we would solicit from that pool of people before we ever posted it for the open.
Is it based on
competitive
their
public.
seniority? No, it doesn't say that, right? And that's what it is now. Based on their seniority, they can come over, based on seniority. As far as the paratransit. I don't know about the county, because we didn't really get into those discussions, but I think we're doing an injustice to the whole transit system when we're not trying to take care of the entire transit system, because the mass transit is affected by the paratransit. We work on their vehicles, right? In at ECAT, they work on those vehicles. And, I just, they drive for a living, they transport lives. They receive similar training that we do, about how to customer service and communication to the people we transport. I got one that's sitting right here. She transferred over from the paratransit, correct? And based on her seniority, which, by the way, she's still waiting for a uniform. How long have you been here? Got no uniform. 6 months, no uniforms, which is ridiculous. But it's just, we already hashed this out. I don't know why we're revisiting it again. I agree from previous conversations, we should revisit the idea of a county employee coming over, because we forgot while we were negotiating last time some concerns, talking about the fact that an individual from the county is coming over, they don't have the same vacation and tied to their annual leave. We never thought of that in previous negotiations. To me, that's a simple fix. We can have a talk, we fix it, we put the language in the contract, we're good. But here we are, changing everything again. So
Well, to answer your question about why we're revisiting it, is because it was taken to the board and they did not accept it how it was, and they asked us to revisit it.
So what were their concerns? Can you help me with that?
Yeah, we can't get into, I can't speak for the commissioners themselves.
You can't.
Well, then, if we don't know what the problem is, then how do we get to a solution?
Well, this is what we're proposing. And ultimately, who to promote and who to hire is up to the discretion of management. But as it's written, they will give consideration to existing employees and paratransit before they solicit, for outside applicants.
I disagree.
That's our proposal.
I disagree.
And you may counter.
It's a collective bargaining agreement with classifications we bargain over. We have the right to bargain over our working conditions, and that includes up to but not limited what the qualifications are. So while you have the right to hire and fire, well, we have a right to negotiate over what those qualifications are. And what you've taken out is everything that said we had those rights. That's fine. I totally understand it. But we're not going to give up our right to collectively bargain over classification. So
I'm sorry, I'm not following you. Classifications? Or
qualifications,
We're not talking
classifications.
about qualifications for the job.
Okay. I could have swore that was my original question, but okay.
That was section 3, right?
Yeah, but okay. We understand. We understand.
Okay?
Okay.
He has a question too.
I got a question on
Sure.
section 2. Was the bottom part of section 2 added on where the employee may not seek relief through the grievance procedure if deemed unqualified for promotion? Because I don't see it in our original contract. And although I don't understand.
It's new language, it's underlined.
Okay.
So let me get that, I want to feed off of what you just said. The county retains the sole discretion to determine whether an employee has satisfactorily completed the probationary period, and an employee may not seek relief through the grievance procedure if deemed unqualified for promotion. Is that just referring to a new hire?
The problem with that is that's the language in the county's contract.
I know, but
I know,
I'm trying to figure out, is that just, because it's in the job promote, so I just want to make sure we're in agreement. Is it
My
for new
understanding
hires?
is under new hires.
Just new hires?
I mean, that's my interpretation of this, is that this would be for new hires.
Okay. All right.
It's all right, so let's hit 7, since we're doing so good. Let's hit 7. But I really think this is really, really stretching it. Did you read it, Mike?
I did read it.
Bulletin boards, you okay with that one?
Well,
You negotiated that in some of your contracts where the union board has to be asked for permission. We're not in America no more. We're in a whole different country now.
well, before, there was language that said the union may not post material that is not approved by a union official, and that is construed as offensive appropriate, and that,
But this one says, a copy of each item posted by the union must be provided to the department director or designee at least 24 hours before posting. Really?
well, if,
So who owns the board, the county or the union?
well,
Everyone.
Mm.
It's a collaborative.
it says that.
We don't tell you what to put on your board.
It says a designated union official would be granted reasonable access to the facilities during regular working hours to post items on the bulletin boards. You can post items on the bulletin board. We're not stopping you from doing that.
A copy of each item posted by the union must be provided to the department director or designee at least 24 hours before posting?
No. If,
I gotta ask permission.
well, it doesn't say that.
I gotta give him
It doesn't say
24-hour
that?
notice.
No, it doesn't say
I
that.
don't run my
Did I read that
business
wrong?
just like y'all don't run yours. If something happens and I need an emergency, I'm not going to the
Yeah, it's not
county
permission, it's just
director.
like heads up, like this is what we're.
It ain't none of his business. It's union business.
I was just explaining.
I got you, but it's none of the company's business what we discuss with our members about our internal organization. It's none of the business. They want to read it while it's posted. It's stop up in front of it, look at it. If you want to read it, see if it's inappropriate, stop up there, look at it, and read it. You know, we have a union meeting, I have to tell you about our bylaws and whatever else we may be discussing. I'm not going to give him a copy of it.
Well, that's not something you would post on your bulletin board, is
Sure it is. Yes, it's anything to do with our business.
If it's
we're
going to be
supposed to-
posted on the bulletin board, then they would have, the department director would have access to it anyway.
I mean, I would
Do
see
what?
it.
Yeah,
But why
see
should
it.
we have to give it to her ahead of time? Why?
if you want to look at
See
it,
it, yeah.
you want to look at it, if you want to go on the internet and look at my internet page, yeah, that's right, because it's open.
What is
It's
it?
on a bulletin board, but I don't have to give it to you.
Is that the only
Oh,
issue
give
that
it
you
to
have, is
That's
providing
just one
24-hour
that I read. that-
No, let me look more.
Oh,
Most of the language is very similar to what was already in.
That's why I didn't bring it up. That's why I didn't bring it up, but that one sentence concerned me.
Well,
Okay.
sounds like you don't like it.
Well, it just sounds
I
like.
can tell you, the county has
it
done
just sounds
things to my
like it's-
union boards. I have never had anything taken off my union board because it was inappropriate, but I've had the county take things off my union board. Okay?
Say that again?
At Roads and Bridges, they completely wiped out my union board and took it off and put their own stuff up at Christmas time. They took everything off my board. And I confronted the director, and I was like, what the heck? Why did you do this? Oh, it's Christmas. My girl's putting up pretty wrapping paper on the board. I said, that's our board. The county felt that they could take down our notice, our meeting notice.
What came of all that? What material?
You know
was on
what, it was the
board now?
holidays. I decided not to push it because I figured I was going to wait. Yeah, well, it was our board. That's the point.
He was making your board pretty.
I had a meeting notice up there.
Well,
Did he put it
okay,
back
then
up
did he put it
there?
back
No,
up?
they did not.
I was just.
Did you
They
ask
did
them
not.
to?
They threw all my paperwork out.
Next time you want to make it pretty, leave us a check of $100 or better. We'll definitely
Some
put
green.
a charity.
Go to Dollar
put a-
Tree
put
and
a-
get wrapping paper $1.
Well, I didn't want any.
Put $100 up
on my
there, and
union
put
board.
green and red around it and say Merry Christmas.
No,
Union.
you provide me with that, I promise you.
That's enough.
But seeing that happen over there, I'm thinking you're going to do it again on ours.
We're not suggesting by anything we put on the table that we can, at any point in time, strip your boards of all your material and throw them out so that we can put holiday paper on it. So if that happened, it won't happen again. Valentine's Day maybe, okay, maybe Valentine's Day. But then after that, after the Hearts of the Cupid, no, never again.
What about Mardi Gras?
Well, Mardi Gras, maybe.
Oh, we're in Pensacola.
Well, you think it's a joke, but you know what? If I went to your boards and took things off your boards, you guys would have a fit.
No, they fire us.
They fire you. So I'm just making the point that I have never put in anything up there other than what's called union business. And it's none of your business what I put up there, unless it's derogatory towards you, right? I don't understand. If I put up there, we're having a meeting notice, if I put up there, we're putting out a scholarship for people, why do I have to go tell the department director that?
All right, all right, I think we indicated that we know you don't like that, and we might, and if you brought that to our attention, we're flexible. Yeah. We can change that.
What size is our board right now? I have to think about that, too.
We need one as big as that TV.
It's little by little.
I think
We could get a TV to just.
I think our board's about that size.
I just think y'all could get the TV.
I believe in the.
I think I like that.
Language, you are allowed to
rolling.
have a 4x5 bulletin board.
At ECAT, we have a actually, we're supposed to have 3 boards. This is how, we're supposed to have 3
I think
boards.
this is status quo language, that you're allowed to maintain 3 4x5 bulletin boards. So,
Yeah, we only have 2 on the property. We've only utilized
you're
2.
apparently allowed to erect another if you like. That's
We
on
will.
you.
Okay. All right, union dues.
You should have electric bulletin boards.
Huh?
You should have electric bulletin boards.
Electric?
That's what we were just.
Electric. They come into the age
So you
of
put multiple
technology.
messages, they
As long as y'all providing it, we all for it.
Oh, we can't do that.
take it back, take it back.
Then you'd say we have control over it. We're,
Problem with the
Only thing we
electric
want
board,
you
it
to
would have an outlet,
buy it.
unplug it.
You'd have a backup
No, we're just
generator.
going to cut off power to
you'd get
it.
hacked.
We're going to go to the electric box, and flip
Oh,
it.
yeah.
You'd get hacked.
No, governments don't get hacked.
You know what happened? You'd get hacked by the Russians, and then it'd be bad ATU, and the
No,
Russians would do it.
Then we'd have to impeach
Then we'd have a
whoever did it.
big trouble.
You driving politics into this, from federal politics into this? Okay.
I
I'm moving to Canada.
All right, union dues.
All right, we're fixing your bulletin board process.
Well, we'll see, we'll counter to this.
Okay, good, County.
That's for sure, I don't know nothing about that. I'm struggling with section 3.
Oh, we skipped 2.
Yeah, I'm not a financial secretary, so I don't,
120 hours.
I'll let Shay go through.
I wasn't just
two.
talking about that, I was struggling with the one before that too.
While Shay reads 2, let's go to 3. That's where the meat of this is all at. This is the whole thing. I didn't want to finish the whole part of that sentence, but let me just. Okay. We get that there was, the case, the PERT case, right? About some professor that was playing a game, he just, whatever he did, okay?
Is that in section 8?
He's a lawyer. Oh, I'm sorry, he slipped up, I'm sorry. He was a lawyer, he was running around doing business and all that, right? Outside of being a professor or whatever he was doing? That's the case, right?
He's,
He was union president.
I've had 35 years of practicing against him.
Right.
He's a good guy.
But he shouldn't have done what he did, right?
Well, I don't know about that. I wasn't involved.
He was using their time, right? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, he
You talking about Allen versus Miami-Dade College?
yeah.
Yes.
Can you give me that rule?
Yeah,
Yeah,
No, I'm serious, because
I am serious.
I have a copy.
if you don't mind.
I have a-
Yeah,
he-
and it's so it's, in a nutshell, I think it's a case that came out of the Public Employees Relations Commission. I think it might have gone to the DCA and been, gone through the Florida courts. I gotta check it out. Do you remember that, Kristen, if that went to the DCA? Third DCA? I think it might have.
Maybe so.
But anyway, it's a case where PERC said, this is Public Employees Relations Commission, this is what union release time can be used for, this is what it cannot be used.
Yeah,
So-
please send me that. if you
Yeah,
don't mind.
yeah. That's all we're saying. We're just saying, we recognize that there's this law out there. And the Public Employees Relations Commission and their thing, I think, said something like, in that case, you'll see it, Curtis.
Okay.
We realize that there's release time in a bunch of contracts. But all you public employers out there, don't sign any new contracts that do not comport with this law, with this
Paid.
case.
Is it paid release time, right?
It's paid, it's released.
Any
yes.
form of compensation,
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, paid.
Compensation.
but that can
Paid.
be other things,
Uh-huh.
benefits that are also accruing,
Okay.
even if compensation's not being paid.
It's not that big of a
I
deal,
like
as
to
long
read and
as,
understand it.
So,
it's just that some work that is done, shouldn't be done during paid release time. It should be done otherwise.
so we get that.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
We're not trying to do anything more than what the law says.
Yeah, I just want to understand.
so get me
I'm not
to,
in
sure.
Florida,
get me
so.
to 120 hours where you list that. Why did you come up with 120 hours when you knew we had 110 days under the previous contract? Why is it 120 hours?
I think Janice can speak to that, or I can if you'd like me to.
I'm happy for you too.
Well, that, under all of the union contracts under the county, is the most release time that is granted under any of them.
So for instance, 120 hours, that's 12 days in our 10-hour shifts, right? So I don't think that's, I attend more meetings based on management calling those meetings in 12 days, way more than that, of just activity of dealing with management and not directly dealing with the employees as the union officials, okay? But 12 days is a blink of an eye, okay? It is. I mean,
110 days.
It doesn't seem to be
110
a
days?
problem for any of the other union officials.
Oh, well,
And,
when you say the other union officials, you're talking about the other unions, right?
yes,
Okay. depends on who's having the conversation with them, right? If you're having that conversation, maybe I don't know what they're saying, but I know when I have conversations with them, I think they would love 110 days, obviously, in their labor agreements. You don't think so?
I think the point is,
610 days.
To represent their members on a daily basis? You know, some of these union days are not just us not representing it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've gone into meetings with management on various issues that are, now, it might have stopped under the new management. I don't know. We'll see how that works out. But in previous management, we had relationships, and we would meet and discuss how we addressed issues. We would address concerns, and we would meet as management and union. And I'm just,
Y'all really penalize somebody for stepping up, being a union member. It's almost like, after reading this, you know, it's, ooh. I mean, be careful of how I say it, but it's almost anti-union. Reading this language, this is not a respecting the rights of workers to have union reps and union officials, and then everything revolves around them is taking a personal hit. They can't get time counted. It's one or two. You want 4 people. You want to limit it to 4 people. 4 people ain't hurting your budget if they work overtime and then represent workers. I mean, that's just one of them. But then you got all of this leave you want denied. It's the most anti-union stuff I've ever seen handed across the table is all I'll say. Even with city and county workers.
I think that's
City
one
of Tampa, I just daggone negotiated 800 more hours of union time. And I come over here and you sitting around penalizing workers for having union reps. Who would ever want to be a union rep and speak up for the rights of workers if the county is daggone beating them down?
I think the elected officials in Tampa have figured out with their management team how to have better relationships with unions. At least that's what I
There's a
see.
much better relationship between workers in the city of Tampa and the transit workers than here, but just point it out because it's still a governmental, agency.
How much do they get? I know
You don't even want to know about that. It's got 800.
way more than 100.
And they roll over, but this isn't even giving them a right to be off. So if they went to any type of training or convention or anything like that talks about union business that you don't pay for, you take away the benefits, the paying of their benefits and everything else. This is anti-union. That's all I do. It's the worst language I've seen in my career.
If this language is in place, and we had to spend 2.5 years of negotiating a contract, I don't know who would be sitting across from the table, but maybe one of us would be. I don't know, maybe Curtis will be coming in here and doing it by himself, because,
They wouldn't like me if I just did it.
it's just,
alone.
this doesn't give the employees a voice.
I'd be passing the language that was from the federal government.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
anyway, I understand.
To me, this is not reasonable. It's not working with the union to give us, what we negotiated before, Mike, we worked all the way through it. And, the union backed down all the way to 60 days or 600 hours per year. We went all the way down from 110. So we gave in. So you're just kind of beating us a little bit more and trying to get us all the way down, right? With no union leave, right?
Sends a message from the county commissioners exactly where they're at.
We went down back to 600 hours a year, per year, in good faith, through those 2 years of negotiations. Everyone seemed to be happy at the table. Now, I got new players now. I get it. You're new. And we even had agreements that said, okay, understanding that negotiations can drag on often, okay? And unless you're a union that just rolls over and signs everything that's put across the table to them, we actually try to, I'm not saying anything against the other union, but
I think that's exactly what you just did.
I'm trying to say that this union is fighting, we We just don't sign anything without looking at it and understanding what your intent was. If I had signed, for instance, that MOU, I would have never known it was just for existing employees, because it doesn't say that in the MOU, okay? So we're spending 2 years here negotiating a contract, over 2 years, that we already negotiated and we're signed off and agreed to. Union business. It was a hard pill for our side to swallow it, but we did because from the union perspective of the union officials, we said, you know what? Okay. We're going to take the hit from 110, because when we got the 110, by the way, previous employers, we gave up things to get to that level 110. It wasn't just, here's 110 days, take it, you can have it. That wasn't how it happened. It was through negotiations, we gave up some things at the table. So we understand, we're at the table with you, we're going to back it down to about 60 days, right? But then we had a discussion about 50 more days, 500 more hours. That was put on the table, and Amy Lavoie agreed. She literally looked me in the eye and said she agreed to it, and said 500 hours directly for labor negotiations. Labor negotiations.
That was, okay, let me be quiet.
So now we feel like, here we are, we're back at it now, and you're pushing it down backwards even more. I mean, he's absolutely right. Feels like it's sending a clear message to the union where, he calls it, what'd you call it? I call it a different word. I call it union busting, but he calls it another word.
Best anti-union language I've seen.
Anti-union, but.
So let me.
Sounds like you're going to give us a counter.
It is, we are, definitely. I kind of, miscellaneous ain't too bad, but can you?
I already gave you a counter.
Can you, add?
Which I've noticed you don't have in front of you was all the counters we gave you. I've noticed no one has them in front of them. If you do, you didn't, maybe I'm mistaken, I would apologize if you do have it in front of you, but I haven't seen it.
All right.
Okay.
Good deal.
Okay, good. And, I countered with what we agreed to before, which is what we think is reasonable.
All right, so you're just going to, you're verbally countering with your last proposal.
So Mike, I'm countering with that because that is what,
All right.
we in good faith, that's what we negotiated before, and we gave that to you, and your team agreed to it. I can't help it that one person was not in the room when it was agreed to. And now she's still here, but she was not in the room when it was agreed to. I just think that's inappropriate. That's not the way you do things. So.
Well, I understand your position, Mike. Curtis was about to say something agreeable, and you cut him off. He says something miscellaneous doesn't look so bad, he says.
No, I work for the president, he's fine.
Yeah. Miscellaneous doesn't look so bad to you, huh, Curtis?
I just don't have them, and I wanted to know what the employees, I need to have
Before you
copies.
say
of
it,
what.
we had a miscellaneous counter too, that was original stuff we worked on miscellaneous, they completely ignored. I appreciate what they put on here, I appreciate that, but there was a miscellaneous proposal that would have actually almost been, it was close to being agreed to, and there were things they actually agreed to in the past that were on there as well. For instance, the union being a part of the MTAC board, being able to sit someone on the MTAC board. I don't think they're saying that anymore.
Well, I'm not saying that, I'm not taking a position on nothing. I don't work for the county, so I was asking for a copy of the EAP program and the tuition reimbursement program. Those are things
We have
that.
county policies.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I just don't have them, so I mean.
Send you a link.
Right, so that's all.
Okay. I'm making a list.
1, 2, and 3 are, just things I'd like to read, but.
Sure. Okay.
So I'm not taking a position on them, I don't have them.
And these weren't previous things that the employees were offered where y'all didn't have a tuition reimbursement or EAP.
We had a EAP.
No, I had EAP.
Oh, yeah, under the private sector.
Behavioral.
Under First Transit.
Yes.
And
Veolia.
Veolia
Okay,
in
I was
First
just-
Transit.
We had
EAP.
Okay.
You mentioned grievance arbitration, and I don't see that you actually, did you give us a proposal on that? No.
No.
But you made a comment earlier that you thought that we were agreeable to make changes to it, so why did you say that?
Because we have gone into Article 5 and 6, and we believe, improved it. And we'll get you a proposal on that.
Is it similar to the other unions process?
I don't,
You believe that you improved it, you said, Mike?
Well, you and I have
It's
had
improved.
email discussions in which we have both agreed that the arbitration article needs to be updated.
Okay.
That was my
Well,
take.
that's why I brought this up, because
Yeah.
if that is what you were referencing to, some old arbitration language, I would be agreeable to that. I would say, yes, it just needs to be cleaned up and be more specific, that when the union moves it to arbitration, that it'll go directly to an FMCS process. Yeah, right. I agree to that. But the old language is kind of the old, it's like construction.
yeah,
language
it's not, it's,
From construction labor agreements.
yeah, it's not, it's,
Both sides have an arbitrator, which was, the real intent was that both sides would have.
it's weird. It's unusual. It's kind of, it looks like it would be expensive for everybody, the way it's written. I think we can do it a little bit more effectively, faster, cheaper.
Right.
That's all.
Right. So,
Improved.
okay.
Improved, okay.
So I will say this, since you mentioned grievance, I just want to say this, and this is just not any kind of proposal or anything like that. I will say that there has been a concern on our side
All right.
of a long, drawn-out processes that are being ignored. Our time limits have been ignored in grievance processes, or have been going way past what the agreement is. You know, we've been trying to be, on our side, patient with that, but it's frustrating. For instance, we have a grievance right now for a seniority issue for a maintenance employee that it was filed in December? December, I could pull it up. December something, and, you know, the grievance process says that they'll be responsive, you know, a hearing, a grievance, formal grievance process will happen with the first step within 5 days, excluding weekends and holidays, right? But that hasn't occurred. We're in the middle of January, and this guy is just livid. He's livid because he's like, what happened to my grievance process? And there's a communication gap that's going on, you know, that I don't know why, you know, that's just one example. There have
Yeah,
been
and
others.
I can't address that example.
So, you know, there's a reason why we like the 5 days. You know, the 5 days we think keeps the process moving quicker. You know, this whole, you know, that's why you see our proposal and our county contract taking it down from what you have, because it drags out. And it's frustrating on the person that's the grievant, because they're waiting and waiting and waiting. I mean, you know, they're waiting to have their grievance processed and heard. And putting people on administrative leave with pay is fine. We're okay with that if it's at that level. But there should be some communications of why this is happening. Why is someone waiting out there to have a grievance heard? And it's not happening. I mean,
There's no time for both sides?
there's timeline. You know, I just had to move the grievance to her level because,
Well, if they don't respond,
Because-
they don't need to vote?
well, it
Well,
wasn't,
it wasn't that, it was a miscommunication as far as scheduling, because I believe from several of the emails I saw from the maintenance manager, as far as trying to coordinate and schedule, that, if you're talking about the particular one, Mr. Scott, if that's one we're referencing, that there was emails back and forth as far as trying to schedule that particular grievance, and I guess there may have been a breakdown in communication on
So-
confirming a date or time.
so a grievance becomes a formal setting, a formal process, right? Steps, each step is a formal process. It's not, you know, and your maintenance manager's like, just come by and see me, you know, and I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Offer me dates and times, because we have to schedule, because we're going to bring the grievant, potential witnesses. I have to make arrangements with union officials to figure out who can go with me, right? And so that, you know, maybe there's some training that needs to be done on your end, I don't know, but, you know, I'm just concerned that when, in other grievances, we've gone way past the time too, and those were even grievances that went to your level. And so I'm concerned that we need to be staying in line with the time limits that are in the labor agreement.
And I hear what you're saying, and I know that the way that what's in the current CBA, the one that we're working off of, that is, when we were under First Transit, there was that 5-day window was easily to be accommodated. Now that we are a county department, a lot of the grievances, if it's going to result or was based off of discipline or that has involvement of HR, that process is now, even not only just the grievances, but even the discipline, that there's more parties involved than it was when we were strictly just under First Transit. So if it's a grievance in reference to a suspension or for termination, what have you, that also involves the HR department as well.
So what are you trying, I guess I'm trying to say, you can't communicate within 5 days? Is that what you're telling me?
Depending upon what the issues, if the people are available, yes. So it's not just someone that's in our office that's sitting at 1515 West Fairfield. It's now making sure that they're the same individuals that you want to make sure are available, the actual individual, making sure you have officials there to represent the individual. We have to do the same thing on our side as well.
So I'm hearing this officially, I've assumed this, but officially, I'm finally hearing this for the first time, that is the reason. It's what I assumed was the reason why you were missing time limits, is because the county was in the process. Why wasn't there a communication with the union about that since then and say, look, I'm sorry we're missing time limits, but this is why we need to rectify this and come up and have a discussion about this? Instead of just unilaterally ignoring the process that is in the labor agreement, and then I have members of this union sitting here, they're following the labor agreement. You've had the union tell you and turn to our own members and say, I'm sorry, we missed the time limits, we're dropping your grievance because we screwed up and we missed the grievance. But we could have turned around and actually done the same thing back to you and said, I just think that wasn't good communication.
I mean, we've had conversations in my office during other grievances, myself, you, Ed Spainhauer from HR, about this exact same thing. And I thought we had conveyed that same information to you at multiple times with multiple grievances that you have heard with me in my office.
All right, well, we'll work through all that, and we have this 5 and 6,
so
that we'll get a communication.
I got
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I know you probably still have.
I just got 2 little ones.
Right.
About the union dues, is that saying that I have to put in a request to get the checkoff list?
Which article?
Section 2? Yeah. Because I need it sent out every time dues are deposited. And the next question will be, when will the money be deposited? Because I didn't see that.
I think that's would be a clerk question.
I know, but.
Yeah, I'm not, I could.
All right.
Okay.
And they've reviewed this, and it's standard for their usual practice, so I'd rather Nikki and Lorraine address that question.
You keep saying it's standard, but we sat in Jack Brown's office with the clerk office and representatives and worked out what was in the best interest of everybody, and now all of a sudden you want to make change. After we done sat down and worked it out.
All right, any other questions?
No, I guess I can just wait till the next section and ask them.
Definitely, Nikki and Lorraine can speak to that.
So you want to know when it would be deposited?
Yeah, and
under
then.
Section 2?
Yeah, and this is, like I said, for me, just looking at it, it looked like that I had to make the request for the authorization for the checkoff list, but I need it for audit purposes. I have to attach everything to
We'll definitely counter this because while we still need to
see
answer the
it?
question so we can understand it, it doesn't work for us.
Do you have anything else for us today, Chris?
No,
I do. I'm sorry, but.
I have to have a conversation with you outside.
Okay, I'm concerned about, I've been getting hounded by employees about their uniform status, okay? So there was a grievance filed, and so I want to make sure I understand something, because right now the collective bargaining agreement is being ignored, what it actually says, okay? So, again, unilaterally, it's being ignored. The county is sitting there, and how much has been approved, 5,000 or something?
$5,000.
$5,000 for uniform.
For the fiscal year of 1920.
So why are individuals who've been here 4, 5, 6 months that are driving permanent routes out there still wearing their personal clothes? Why aren't they having uniforms?
We have not utilized, we have notified Bossos of the decision by the Board of County Commissioners. Our intention, and we've worked actually diligently with purchasing to come up with a alternative solution, because that 5,000 could end up being ate up by one individual, or it could be, well, not necessarily, but one or two individuals, and we would not have any other funds for the rest of the fiscal year.
One or two other individuals.
Well, if we have a new hire class, if we do not have enough, based off everyone's allowances, that could be eaten up, because we also have pending ones that came in from last year that still have, we still need to make sure that folks have those particular funds available for their uniforms. So if we use up all of 5,000 now, there is no other 5,000. So we have been working diligently to try to find a solution with purchasing. That means putting out an RFP, putting out an invitation to bid, so we can have a permanent contract. Because my understanding and directive from the board is that we need to have a contract for uniforms. And currently, right now, we do not have the county does not have a contract with Bossos uniforms. Right now, we are just working at will, but there is not a county contract with Bossos uniforms.
I have a question.
Yes.
You stated that you still have purchases in orders from last year that have not been filled.
To my understanding from Colette, and I can verify that there are still some outstanding invoices that we're still addressing right now.
How can they be penalized for those, though, if those were supposed to be billed out for last year and they were ordered last year? That should have been on last year's budget and already paid, but they're being penalized and not getting them.
Well, I can clarify that with Colette. To my understanding, that they came in after October 1 for last year. So my understanding, as I've mentioned before, as far as the uniforms, no one is getting penalized for currently what we have. That has been my priority, and I spoke to even Colette yesterday, we need to find out status with purchasing so we can get the invitation to bid, because there are multiple options that we have looked at, options of possibly going to Cintas for our operating uniforms and not just our maintenance uniforms, because there is a contract with Cintas. I know there's other contracts through other departments, such as GALS with corrections and EMS and fire, which just looking at that initially, because of the needs of our agency, that would not work, or that would not be beneficial for our organization, because they only come once a year. We need someone that is local. And my conversation with working with purchasing is that once we have determination which direction we're going, that I will, myself and the union, because I gave them a copy of the grievance and the resolution to the grievance, that then we can make sure that we have all the stuff that's included in the invitation to bid, collect in our conversations together, make sure there's nothing missed going forward, so we can actually have a contract with a uniform company going forward.
In good, let me throw this, in good faith, the union went through the grievance process, and I got your response, and I'm okay with that response. What I'm not okay with is that an individual, we have several individuals that are wearing their own personal clothes, having to wash their clothes every day because they only have one or two shirts and one or two pair of pants, and they're sitting out there, and she feels under stress, and she feels like she's not part of the organization in many ways, but she's a full-time employee, and she's walking around in dressed like that. She's feeling like, why can't we? So you're saying we can't get any uniforms?
No, that's not what I'm saying, but thank you for bringing it to my attention, and I'll make sure on Tuesday when we get back to the office that we at least get them, at minimum, some shirts, if not the pants, but at least something, so they can be consistent with everyone.
Right.
You have my word on that.
Okay, thank you, appreciate
I
it.
think that one thing, Tony. You said about the last year order.
Yes, they are, yes. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So, no, it's fine. So, I know I went in before the deadline, and I was told, no, you cannot get it, because the order was not fulfilled, meaning back, in enough time. So they stated that I would not receive it. So that's something else that you can.
Okay, is this yours?
Yeah, because like I said, and when I called to check on it, she was like, oh, no. It got to be, I said, no, this is old monies. This is not nothing new.
When you called Bossos, or when you called?
I called Bossos.
Okay.
I called Bossos, and they stated that anything that didn't come in before this time, I can't help because y'all slow. I did my part.
Yes.
And, so they was like, well, you're not going to be able to get it unless you pay for it. Okay,
No.
So, just bringing that up too, there's
If you can give me the specifics, and then I'll look into it first thing on Tuesday.
I have one question about the uniform.
Yes, ma'am.
Conversations that we have had
Mm-hmm.
regarding what happened and why we're in this predicament. The RFP that you're saying you're trying to put out, if everybody gets the allowance they currently have, we all know that that RFP is going to have to be at least written for what, $33,000 or $34,000 if everybody gets that total amount. So it does not have to go back before the board
Correct.
every single year. So do we have a number that y'all are looking at to put on that RFP as your minimum? Because, you know, that's going to be a,
Well, typically, the RFP, most of those contracts typically are either going to be a 3-year or 5-year, or some,
And it's a low bid, you know.
yeah, if it's a low
we
bid.
Send out the specifications, and then people would bid their price, and you pick the lowest bidder.
So it would,
Lowest bidder.
Typically.
I'm just worried
If it's an
that
invitation.
We look at the,
You don't
we look at the totality.
You don't look at the quality of
No,
what
yeah, we
they're
look at the
providing, do you?
totality of it, but that's why she said typically.
Okay.
But if you pick the lowest bidder and their lowest bidder is still below what we actually need, that's still gonna, we're still gonna be in the same issue.
well,
where people aren't gonna
it's
get
not
what they
going to
need.
impact, well, the contract or the bid would not impact the individual's allowance. It's more so of the overall. So
That's
if,
what I want to clarify.
yes. So I'm not saying that it's going to incorporate having less of an allowance for the individuals. What I'm saying is that we have to have a contract, according to purchasing, with a, and I was just as shocked as probably anybody up there at the podium, is like, no, you don't have a contract with them, no, you cannot, basically, correct me if I'm wrong, you cannot use them. And I was
Okay,
like,
all right,
So,
good.
Yes.
there's contractual language
Tony
under
did.
that article that
Okay.
I hope that we don't forget. Both parties shall mutually agree upon the designated uniform supplier, however, should be necessary to change providers, the company and the union will meet to negotiate the change. So I just hope that that part is not ignored, because, you know,
We
I
have
will.
to follow the procurement process.
Yeah. What does that mean? That means that you're not going to follow the negotiating part of the labor agreement?
Well, if purchasing is putting out a solicitation, then they will receive sealed bids on an invitation to bid, and it will be awarded to the lowest bidder that is qualified to meet the specifications.
Okay, so let me say this to you, because this is, to me, this is important. This is another area that is concerning to us, okay? Because, you know, number one, there's language in the contract that says it should be negotiated. From hearing what you just said, it sounds like, sorry, but we're unilaterally doing some other way to ignore that. But number two, the reason we've already experienced having an outside, you know, uniform place that's not from here, where they ship in the shirts and the pants. We've experienced it once. So there is a big concern about the uniforms. People take pride in what they wear in their uniforms, and they're in the public eye every day. You want them to be wearing a nice uniform, right? So they're concerned because, and I will say that specifically, the females, they like having the local person they can walk right in and say, hey, this doesn't fit right. This is not proper. You know, this is way too tight on me, or whatever, right? And being able to say, no, you're not measuring me right, or something to that effect. We ran into that, we know that from history. We ended up with a room full of clothes that was sitting on a rack, where people are like, I ain't accepting that. So I hope that while you did offer in the grievance process, that we are going to have someone sit in the RFP process, which we will emphasize that concern. But I just hope that we're not ignoring the labor agreement, because I will say, personally, we like the local, having the local supplier. We think it's important, based on that reasoning I just gave you, that people don't want to have a mail order type thing, you know, where it comes in and they're concerned that it doesn't fit properly, and they never got to try it on the clothing. But maybe we can find ways to get around that. We can see how that works through this process. One last thing, and then we can look at calendars. So I know we had the little moment there back and forth about the buyout. I would hope, though, and I get the feeling that this is not going to happen, but I'm going to ask it, and I wouldn't, because I know my members are going to ask me. You know, we could put that to the side and meet separately just on that issue, and try to resolve that issue as quickly as possible, or get to a conclusion of that issue, to try to find a way, because we have individuals that are waiting on all of us, and they're waiting for us to, they're sitting here waiting for us to work it out. And I just want to put it on behalf of the union, that we're always willing to meet between these times, and if you want to call it negotiation, that's what it is, but just take that one item to try to see if we can communicate on that and get through this, so we can take care of these individuals and have a plan, so you have people to fulfill those positions, so you won't find yourself having 6, 7, 8 people, whatever the number is, walking out the door, and then you don't even have replacements, and you're paying more overtime for that.
Well, so, as the administrator said earlier, Mike, we are concerned about these individuals, and we want to see a better transition to their next opportunities. But that's something we'll have to discuss, and how we would staff something like that, but we'll take that under advisement. That could happen, maybe. I don't know how we'd staff it. But that's a thought to break that out and focus on that separately in a more compressed time period. Yeah, okay. All right, we'll put that on our list.
Tanya, is Boss Holes thinking on bidding on it?
I have not communicated them directly. We have given their name to purchasing to make sure they include them on any invitation for bid. And in reference, and I didn't share with purchasing, that if there is because there's usually a committee whenever there's an RFP process.
Well, and
that-
I was going to ask you,
Yeah.
Tanya, is it going to be a request for proposals?
Well,
That's different than an invitation to bid.
From my understanding from Paul, he was still confirming which one it would be.
Okay.
If it is a RFP, then there is a selection committee that reviews the sealed bids. And as I mentioned in the grievance response, that I'm open and welcome to having individuals from the union to be on that particular committee. There's typically 2 to 3, 4 or 5 people on that committee, if it goes the RFP process. The invitation to bid, I know, is a little bit different, but prior to that, my understanding from purchasing is that they would request the minimum requirements from us as a department, and I'd be more than willing to sit down with you if there's anything specifically that needs to be included in that invitation to bid that we would.
So Tanya, I just want to make sure you just said RFP. You already responded in the grievance, said that there will be a union official or union representative on it, but you're open to more than one.
Well, depending upon what the purchasing determines is the size of the selection committee. That's not my determination, that's up to them. But I did stress to him when we met with him last Friday, is that at minimum, at least one. Myself, and I don't know if it's usually someone from another department, what have you, but at least a representative from the union. If it is an invitation to bid, which is a little bit separate, that I would be willing to meet with y'all to discuss if there are certain things that are must-haves, or would be things that would be critical in including an invitation to bid, to discuss that.
Okay, thanks. Yesterday, you gave us 3 sets of dates, I believe, for us to consider for ATU negotiations for the county's operational services unit. Do you have any other additional dates that you would throw on that list for these negotiations? Because I think you wanted 2 days for those negotiations back to back. So,
We'd want the same for these as well.
well, that's what I figured. But maybe you might have to push into March further